What is up, RotoGrinders? Welcome to 3.5 hours nonstop NFL DFS conversation. Myself, Dean Shavelson at DFS Almanac, TastefulTides, Tim Buell, as well as Bobby Gomes. We set the table the first hour and a half or so. We hand it off, of course, to the next group. The next group coming after us will be Squirrel and Neil and Erik, and then LeLuuch, Will, and Kristi take you home. Crunch time, taking you all the way up to kickoff. It is a monster. It's a big boy slate, not messing around. No teams are on bye. So the slate is massive. You're going to be like, well, why are there so many players that their ownership is so low? Is that TJ cranking some music in my ear? Was that the remix? What's just happening there? I don't know.
I was like, was that me? I thought that was me.
Accident. My bad. Accidentally clicked the button.
Early morning for TJ.
That was really good. That was really good by Dean. He was able to keep going with that. I was like, what is going on right now? That was very
Dean is a professional host.
Yeah, Dean really is a professional. I mean, that's impressive. First thing in the morning. Yeah, it was good.
You guys, is there something going on? Like, why are you so kind to me today? What's going on, Tim? Why are you in such a good mood? Normally, you would never say such kind words, but
it's because we're live on air, Dean. That's why.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. You're just playing a character,
right?
Off air.
It's all part of the bit, Dean. Come on now.
Tim, this is a massive slate, just huge, overwhelming for sure. And again, I was kind of getting to it as far as the ownership stuff. Like some things. Like, of course, there's going to be some players that are going to be heavily owned, but there's going to be a lot of players who's like, well, this guy's so good. I don't understand why it's only 3% owned. Like, it's math. Understand math. The pool is bigger. You're chopping up the pie in more pieces. Should say, by the way, as far as updates, body parts are monitoring. Jaden Daniels looks like he's probably going to play today. Looks like it's leaning that way. Last I saw, Schefter tweeted out about it. It seems like he's going to play. Stay tuned on that. That's also a late game. Matchup amongst the two premium quarterbacks in this last draft with Williams on our side. So it looks like he's going to play, but kind of plan accordingly because that is a later game. By the way, shout out to the NFL. They did get this right. Is it 7-5? No, 8-5, right? Is it 8-5? As far as the split, 1 o'clock games and 4 o'clock games, they did not overwhelmingly load up the 1 o'clock slates. Higgins is dealing with an injury, and I'm not sure if he's going to go or not. He's kind of questionable, probably more likely not to play than to play. Certainly something to monitor.
I think it's the other way around, Dean.
Really?
We just added him to 2 projections.
Okay. Was there an update that I missed?
I think there may have been one. They said that they're hopeful that he will play. The team is hopeful that he will play. I can't remember who was the Jeremy Fowler.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was at 11:15 last night. I think it's the last update. So we've just added him to projections.
I'm hopeful I'm going to win a GPP today. Does that mean I'm more likely to do so, Tim? Because I'm saying the word hopeful?
I mean, we tend to, use these things, with tone, and it seems like, they're hopeful, Dean. They're hopeful. I mean, I'm hopeful. Yeah. I'm hopeful I'll win a GPP today. So.
Sure. But I'm rooting for you, but it's not likely. So that's kind of the point I'm making. Just because it's a math thing, not because you don't know what you're doing. It's just math. That's how that works. I thought Yoshiwasu was an interesting piece, and I already built a lineup with him in there. Etienne is likely out as well. Producer TJ talking about that in chat. Of course, we know Tampa without Godwin and Mike Evans. On the FanDuel slate, it looks like Debo is going to play despite having pneumonia and being in the hospital. But if you're playing FanDuel tonight, one more game on FanDuel, you get Dallas at San Fran. Also, Dallas bringing back this is going to solve all their problems. Dalvin Cook is coming back. They elevated him from the practice squad. So, all right, here comes the championship run for Dallas. The big story, I suppose, is Tua being back for Miami. People are, I can't believe these prices on Tyreek. I've heard several people say this, and it's like Tyreek's got 5 points in the last seven weeks. How much do you want to make the guy? I understand that he looks too cheap by historically, but last 5 weeks or so, he deserves his price tag, maybe even cheaper. He's going to be popular for sure, home run hitter. He's also dealing with a little bit of an injury, but he's supposedly fine. I think it's a leg. He also told you, he actually said, literally, did he say, throw me in your MF in lineup? Basically told the people, play me this week in in fantasy. Bobby, it's a massive slate. There's a lot going on. Jamus is finally getting unleashed for Cleveland in an awesome spot, I guess you can say, because they're probably going to be behind. He's got a lot of cheap options to throw the ball to. That Baltimore secondary is ravaged by injuries. He's probably going to throw the ball 40 times. That's another interesting thing. And he's going to be like 3% owned or something like that. How do you see this slate, Bobby? Because are you as overwhelmed as I am? There's a lot of spots I really, really like, and it's tricky building individual lineups.
Yeah, it's tricky building individual lineups for sure. Definitely an MME type of slate. You said we had Jamus under-owned. Is that who you're talking about? Sorry, I was reading a message from Andy.
Well, I mean, like, he's probably going to be just because everybody's going to be. We currently have Winston at 6%, which is kind of surprising.
I feel like
maybe a little lower than that.
I'll be double the field on Winston. Seems like a very good spot in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Pace up spot.
I love Winston today.
Yeah, I love Winston.
Yeah.
Just a really good play overall. They're going to be throwing the football a ton. Njoku makes a ton of sense paired with him. I like parsing between Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy, and Elijah Moore isn't the most fun. But that's something you just Njoku, yeah. I do think that there is I would just completely X Elijah Moore. He stinks. Jerry Jeudy is gonna run out of the slot. Yeah, that's the analysis. I like Jeudy and I like Tillman more than I like Elijah Moore for what it's worth. But yeah, the easy play is just Njoku.
I like Shannon in chat saying Winston and Ravens defense. That's the old school. Play Jamus and play his defense. It really is wild, but there was some kind of correlation to this like several years ago, just because of how many turnovers he has and how much he likes to throw the ball downfield. You want to give me a big picture, Tim? And also, you're somebody who makes, similar to me, you don't make a lot of lineups. You do a lot of single entry, 3-entry max stuff. It is. Are you having a hard time like deciding your path? Are you still deciding? Are you still kind of figuring it out?
I actually think cash games are relatively easy today, despite how many games there are, at least on DK. So I mean, I think there's some clear and obvious choices for cash. I was kind of hoping T. Higgins wouldn't play because I really wanted to play Chase. I was going to jam him in. I know you still can, but I mean, it's not as appealing as it was if Higgins were out. I'm just talking about for cash games. But you obviously can always play Chase, but I mean, there's some clear and obvious selections in cash. I never thought that I would see the Broncos with a 26 point team total, but that's just how bad this Carolina defense is. I think there's going to be some interesting decisions in GPPs of all sizes when you decide what you want to do with Nix and Javonte Williams. Like, is there enough for both of them to eat in the same lineup? Do you do a max, one of each of those guys in your lineup construction? I'm not really sure. And then also, like, do you want to pair Nix with anybody and just hope that maybe he just has a couple of running touchdowns? And if he does have a couple of running touchdowns, that's going to eat into Williams' ceiling. So I mean, there's this Broncos situation is really, really difficult, I think, from an MME perspective. But in cash games, their floors are so good that I'm happy to play both Nix and Williams on my cash game teams because I'm only worried about a floor. But I think ceiling wise, that's going to be a tricky situation to decipher.
You answer Rob's question in chat, and I agree with you. He asked, can you play Nix and Williams in cash? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think you should.
I think it's a tougher question for tournaments. I think it's tougher.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
I guess you can do that too. I suppose you can. I'm not sure if that's something I will. We talk about how the slate is loaded, and Nix is the most popular quarterback as of right now as far as our projections. He's the only guy in the teens. Right behind him, this is on DK for what it's worth. Tua coming back, awesome landing spot at home versus Arizona. Love at 9%. Love's the tricky thing about Love. Like, he gets 2 touchdowns every single week. Jacksonville gives up 2+ touchdowns every single week. But who do you pair him with? Who do you pair? And he doesn't really have the legs to play a la carte. Like, you can do it, but there's not the correlation element sitting there. By the way, our guy Erik, what's up, chat? Hit that like button. Do subscribe. Do turn those notifications so you know when we go live. Of course, talking football today, but if you're not aware, basketball season in full effect as well. Doing basketball shows every single day. Erik says all the options, all the choices. He says he likes Bryce Young today. Like, that seems so unnecessary.
Erik just sorts fantasy points in reverse and then just says whatever that is. That's all he does in every sport.
Oh my God. That is spectacular. By the way, for the record, Tim, I'm not sure if you saw this. I was looking at our projections. We just updated our projections, and Higgins is not projected right now. So I don't know. According to our projection team, they do not seem to be optimistic that he's playing today. I'm not sure if there's been another update or not, but he's not currently being projected.
You know, so weird.
Give it a refresh, because this is what I saw. This I thought I saw earlier, but yeah, give it a refresh. I do not think he's it seems unlikely. Again, we'll know this 11:30 actives and inactives for the 1 o'clock games. Later on for the 4 o'clock games. I think Yoshi is really interesting. Chase, one of my ideas, and we'll dig into tournament stuff later, but I love the idea of playing Brown and Jamar Chase in the same lineup and just banking in a shootout between Philly and Cincy. Do you want to give the rundown there, Tim, as far as cash? You kind of touched on it, and also worth mentioning. Well, we'll get there in a second, but we actually have like 3K receivers. I mean, I was playing Coker for the cap is not nearly as tight as it was last week. They heard my whining, they heard my complaining. I'm sure it was other people as well, but it's looser. It's loosened up a bit. Thanks in part to Tyreek being only 7K despite being terrible. A-Chan is so cheap. So talk to me about cash games for, I guess, DraftKings first. You kind of touched on it already with the Denver pieces. What else you got?
Yeah, so there's definitely the Denver pieces, and then I think we have to talk about the Buccaneers wide receiver situation, just because Godwin and Evans are both out. So, I mean, there's going to be clear, I think you should be getting to one of those guys, if not two, if you include Otton in that situation, because Kate Otton is definitely going to be your cash game tight end. So one of Shepard, Palmer, or McMillan. I guess I'm leaning McMillan as like my GP from Tampa Bay in cash anyway. That does not mean that you have to play him in tournaments at all if you don't want to. But I think that you're punting. I think you're playing two pretty high end wide receivers in cash games. Then you're punting with one. And then I also think that, I know that I said Kate Otton is your tight end, but I think that you could also play Njoku in cash games as well if you happen to have the extra 1,600, but that's a pretty large pricing gap. So, some of the high-end wide receivers that I'd be looking to get in cash games are definitely Jamar Chase, assuming Dean is right that T. Higgins is out, and then obviously Tyreek. Those two are probably your most obvious choices. So I also think that AJ Brown's interesting as well, but that's more of a tournament pivot away from guys like Hill and Chase. Same thing with Amon-Ra. I really like Amon-Ra today, but again, Chase and Hill are by far your safer options. But there is quite a few of these like really, really like low priced wide receivers. We've got Jerry Jeudy, who I think is kind of interesting. Cedric Tillman is going to be like an extremely good pivot, I think, off of this Tampa Bay chalk. Same thing with Jake Bobo at 3,300. I think he's a really good pivot away from this Tampa Bay chalk. So, and then like you mentioned, if T. Higgins is out, Yoshi Boss at 3,600. So we have like several really, really strong options, under 5K, under 4K as well. Like really, really viable choices. This slate almost feels like a slate that's like one of the last slates of the regular season to me. Like there's a lot of there's a ton of games, right? There's no buys, and there's tons of wide receiver value. So it's definitely, if I was making a ton of teams today, I'd be kind of spreading out at the bottom end of the salary range and probably trying to like concentrate more of my ownership on some of these more expensive guys.
Do you want to note, Tim, on FanDuel specifically? I don't know if they carried the one or there was a misclick. Dalton Kincaid is 4K. I know Kincaid has been disappointing this year, but he's not a 4K tight end. If you look at the other 4K tight ends, they're like the third and fourth string, like blocking tight ends. He should not be 4K in FanDuel. I don't know how much you need it. I made a lineup with him. I made a lineup without him before the show started. But I think if it's something you want in cash games, ideally you probably want to get to Njoku if you have the salary. But I do not mind the idea of stopping at Kincaid and really loading up and getting yourself an extra stud. But there's a comment in chat, by the way, saying Dean like being like a know-it-all. I hope that's not how I come off. That's not my intent. I do not pretend to know it all, just to be clear. I just hope I know enough. I know enough to get by and still play this game for 10 plus years. All right, Bobby, thoughts as far as the overall? You are somebody that's actually making a ton of lineups. Tim was kind of alluding to that. How are you figuring it out? Are you casting a wide net? Are you honing in on these are my 4 or 5, quarterbacks, which you typically do, or you have done in the past, not always. How are we figuring this out? So are we just loading up on a certain core? Are we casting that net of just like good plays? Are we still figuring it out?
I currently have 10 quarterbacks in my pool. I'll probably try to whittle it down to 7. I do think that like starting with the chalk pieces that I think you can kind of poke holes in is the best way to approach this slate currently. In larger field stuff, Bo Nix and Javonte Williams, I think you have to make a really big decision, like Tim said. For me, it would be under the field or a fade on those guys. And then trying to figure out which wide receivers from the Tampa Bay side I want to play in terms of the chalk, and also which Cleveland Browns chalk value I want to play. And then poking holes in those two situations. So that's pretty much how I'm starting. I'm playing. I feel like I'm going to be Xing a good bit of chalk today for what it's worth.
Yeah, McMillan's going to be the most popular player on Tampa as far as their receivers. I guess Otten's probably the best option, right? The tight end, probably the most reliable one. Again, if you're not aware, Evans, Godwin, both Dunzo for today. McMillan, we have currently at 14%, which seems a little bit, maybe a little bit low. Palmer at 7%, 3.5 on DK, 3.7 for McMillan. Former college teammates for Baker is Shepard at 3.8. He's the lowest owned amongst those three. Is it possible that none of those really kind of get there, that none of those are really necessary? Maybe they just run the ball. They have 3 running backs until the game forces them to pass the ball a little bit more. I did bet White over on receiving yards. I think it was 22.5. It's one of the bets that I thought maybe they work him in a little bit more in the receiving game. Do you have a lean right now currently, Bobby? And you mentioned Cleveland as well. And yeah, there's a lot of cheap receivers in that at least you can tell yourself a story. Like you wouldn't be shocked if Shepard ends the day with 3 catches for 15 yards, I wouldn't think, or same deal with Palmer. But you can definitely tell yourself a story in all these guys. Have you figured it out, Bobby, as far as your favorite amongst McMillan, Palmer, Shepard, and I think Otten's the most reliable, different position, of course, but he seems to be the safest, if that makes sense. Well, you have a power rankings amongst the Tampa receivers?
Honestly don't love any of them for what it's worth. Like McMillan would be my favorite, but this is a 13-game slate, right? And if the chalk's going to congest around those guys, then I think you can get away from guys like Palmer, guys like Shepard. McMillan would be the guy that I really want to play. But I still think I'd be under the field on McMillan. I don't even know if I want to play Otten. Like play Otten at the field. I don't think this game is going to be the same game as we seen when Kirk Cousins threw for 500 yards a couple of weeks back. You know what I mean? You're taking out Evans, you're taking out Godwin. I do think Rachaad White probably sees an uptick in terms of his passing usage. But I just don't love this game environment, even though it seems like it should be a pretty good one. It's just something I think I'd rather be less than the field on.
Let us know in chat. Let us know in chat who your favorites, like less than 4K receiver is. I see Jake Bobo getting thrown out there as well. That's under the assumption that Metcalf is not playing. I guess he's not officially ruled out, but he seems highly questionable. He was carted off last week, so I know he's a really tough dude, and if he can come back and somehow find a way to play, he will. I just do not anticipate him playing. Tim Patrick getting thrown out there, the absence of Williams for Detroit. Raymond is another guy, I suppose. I see King Entrepreneur saying Tillman. Herbert Good is saying Coker, the flop flag to Coker. You know what? That would be a wild one. I thought about that too. Johnson not playing for Carolina. There's a lot of under 4K receivers. I want to see if I can just kind of get the list of them. Is Bateman less than 4K? I see Bateman getting thrown out there. Is he less than? He's 4.3, kind of rounding up there a little bit, but okay, fair enough if that's what you want to do. Yeah, Tim,
it is so wide open in this wide receiver range of like that kind of like 45 to 3K range. There's a I don't think I've ever seen this many like really viable options in this price range. So I don't think Coker is like an egregious play, to be honest with you. I think he's a decent play. Can he separate himself from some of these other 3K guys? I don't know. My lean would be no, but I don't think it's horrible if you're MMEing.
You can throw Mingo in that conversation too if you're talking about cheap Carolina receivers. Again, I don't feel good about any of it, but like I think you can throw those guys in the conversation too. I saw Boyd getting thrown out there by in the chats as another option. These are just a bunch of guys that we would have played a ball last week if given they just weren't options last week at this price. Boyd at 3.9 for Tennessee in a dome, likely on the comeback, presumably getting pummeled by Detroit today. Elijah Moore getting thrown out there. Man, it's do we have a favorite, or is it just kind of throwing darts, just kind of like picking the right guy that fits whatever stack you may have, Tim?
Well, I'll tell you, I think we're higher than market on Sterling Shepard, and we have him super low owned. So, or excuse me, the Blitz has Shepard higher than market, and the Blitz has him super low owned. So the Blitz really like Shepard today over everybody else. So I mean that would be Cardi's stand would be taking Shepard. I still prefer McMillan and Cash, but I think Shepard's a fantastic tournament pivot. But yeah, I mean I think it's Shepard I like quite a bit. I like Yoshi. I think Ray McLeod is super interesting for like a little bit more money. I kind of disagree with Bobby. Like I love that game environment. It's projected for the most plays according to the Blitz. So I mean, I really like that game, and I think that's a contrarian way of building into it. So I think Ray McLeod at 4,300 is a really viable play.
Would you play Palmer like in two of his options? Is that something you're considering? The Tampa Atlanta game? I'm assuming you're not playing Cousins. You can, but
Yeah, I don't want to play Cousins. No. No, I mean Palmer's fine. I mean Palmer could end up being the guy, but I do have him ranked 4th out of Shepard, McMillan, Otten, and then Palmer. I do have Palmer ranked last personally. So I don't know. I mean, you certainly can play Palmer.
TJ and chat, all these great 4K options, and if Higgins is out, Yoshi Voss is better than all of them. I kind of agree with that. I just like that game environment. I think Cincy Philly has got a chance. It's got a chance to get loose. Is it National Tight End Day? That's what Erik is telling us in chat. I feel like that happens at least 3 weeks a year. National Tight End. I think that's something they talk about on Red Zone at least 3 times a season. Yeah, I think Yoshi Voss is probably. Yeah, I also just like him in that game. Again, I like him as a double with Chase. Have you considered that if Higgins is out? How much do we like Yoshi? He's been a good red zone target, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, I have absolutely no issue with Yoshi at all, especially if Higgins is out. We did get a question about who would be in the slot for Tampa Bay. I'm assuming it's going to be Shepard. So I think that's probably why the Blitz is taking such a hard stance on him over everybody else. But
that's
I don't know.
Bobby hand in the dirt question, isn't it? I thought I don't know this. I don't pretend to know that kind of stuff. But I thought McMillan is also a guy that might work in the slot as well. You got a thought on that, Bobby?
They said McMillan would work out of the slot. in the preseason, like as an understudy to Godwin. But yeah, he could work outside. I think there was like a report that some ESPN reporter that McMillan would be working out of the slot today a little bit more. So yeah, McMillan's obviously the one Tampa receiver I think I have the most interest in. Like I said, you could play the Atlanta guys for sure. I just don't love the Tampa Bay pass catchers.
I think it was a Coach Speak Index. I saw a clip of it was either the coach or the OC. They were talking about just like different formations, having to change up the formations just in general, possibly. So they didn't necessarily name a name. They just kind of like talked about how, different personnel, 12 personnel, that kind of stuff. How they have to the drastic difference. Imagine you lose your top 2 receivers, you have to shuffle things up, and we'll see how they handle it. Maybe they run some 2 running back stuff out there. Maybe they put White in the slot at some point. Who knows? Because they are really, really thin as far as receiver. Yeah, Rob is telling me in chat it was Cohen, the OC. Yeah, I knew I was watching a clip. Coach Speak Index is really, really good on Twitter for things of that sort. All right. Do we want to talk about quarterback? We haven't really talked about quarterback. I think one of the biggest conversations of the slate is, these cheap receivers. So I thought it was important to kind of elevate it at the top.
We didn't. I like Demario Douglas.
Okay. Is he healthy today? Is he not going to be throwing up? He's going to be playing?
I think he's playing, yeah. So
or the poops
should be a full go. I know he got sick last week in England. But I like Douglas a good bit on the cheap side. Yoshi Voss, I think, is fine. I think I prefer Yoshi Voss, like as of all these cheap guys. I know he's not. Oh, he's 3.6. So yeah, that isn't a bad price tag on Yoshi Voss. Do we have any word on Zay Flowers yet currently?
I think he's going to play. I think that was a Schefter report. Yeah, last I saw, it was either it all sort of meshes together. It's either early this morning or late last night where I saw Schefter was tweeting about, he kind of gives the rundown. Let's see, Crosby's good to go. We got the Brown brothers playing against each other. Yeah, Chase is playing against his brother in Philadelphia. I'm just pulling up Schefter's. They seem a little bit more optimistic about Daniels playing. Kittle looks like he's going to play. I thought for sure. Zay is expected to play according to Schefter 10 hours ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have liked Bateman in that scenario had Zay been sitting. Jake Bobo at 3.3, I think he's fine. Tim Patrick, he's at 3.5. I think he's a little interesting. Troy Franklin, who I think is going to outsnap Vele. That would be my lean in the Denver game for cheap receiving options. Maybe Noah Brown opens up a little bit more with Jaden Daniels now.
Don't mention him, man. He was on some really good lineups of mine last week. I'm still scarred by Noah Brown. I guess a lot of people last week. At least my guy was like playing and didn't get hurt. So Whittington. It was we got some weird I don't want to say lies per se, but players getting hurt, Whittington dressing but not seeing the field. I guess he visually saw it, but his feet did not touch it when the game was being played. Yeah. I think Yoshi's my favorite amongst this grouping, and he's being projected okay as well. I think he's a good red zone target as well, and I want to get a piece of that for my Philly Cincinnati stack. That's kind of where I'm at. Some other names being thrown out. What do you got?
Do you like Yoshi more than the Tampa and Cleveland guys?
I think lineup construction, I might. You know what I mean? Just kind of
I think I do too, for what it's worth.
I'm pretty sure. I don't pretend to know who the favorite Tampa Bay receiver is. I understand McMillan's probably the best. I feel like he's got the biggest upside. Palmer's kind of like the interesting curveball, and Shepard feels like probably not the biggest ceiling. I know he's got the history of Baker Mayfield, but what is he? These 31, 32? How old is Shepard? They kind of got him at the scrap heap, I believe. I guess he's going to be fine for like 3 or 4 catches, possibly. I just don't know what kind of, not that you need a big ceiling out of a 3K guy, but Yoshi, we've seen him have 2 touchdowns in a game this year. He's been throwing the ball in the end zone several times. Javonte, 25 carries. Yeah, possibly. I think he's going to be super popular. It is weird how that's working today with Denver and Knicks and Williams, two of the bit more popular players in the slate. Are Broncos, which I don't think we've talked a lot of Broncos offense this season. Ryan Miller for the Bucks, is that somebody we've considered? Is that the fourth receiver?
He would
Miller?
He'd be the fourth, yeah.
Is he even projected? I'm trying to see if he's even in projections to have a catch. I'm not sure, but I've not gotten that deep. I'm making enough lineups, so I just can't be that ambitious. But I don't know. I'm not here to tell you like that can't get there. We haven't projected for 0.89 fantasy. Oh, he's a tight end. I guess he's the second tight end for Tampa behind Otten.
Wait, who is it?
Ryan Miller. At least he's a tight end on FanDuel.
Okay, no, he's the wide receiver min price on DK.
Okay, well, FanDuel thinks he's a tight end.
All right, I was going to say you were confusing me there for a second. Yeah, on DK he's projected for 0.68 points. I really can't get behind that play. There are so many good value wide receivers. I don't think we need to get that fancy.
So King Entrepreneur says, why are we playing Yoshi? Higgins is playing. TJ, do you have a second to do a little Twitter search on this? Because I don't think it doesn't seem likely. But again, he certainly can't. He certainly might play. But what I'm seeing is the lean is.
The last thing is from last night that he is hopeful to play. There's still nothing from today.
Okay. And then this, we all know this, when the projection team projects players to be out, it seems like they're more likely not. They usually, if it's 50-50, they'll project them in. That's kind of the way they lean.
The projection team is basing it on the report earlier in the week that says there's a good chance he does not play.
Okay.
And then there was a report last night that he's hopeful to play. They haven't changed. They're just leaving it off until we get something more. But they were also trying to make that decision on the report last night, and they just decided to leave it.
If T does play, there's a 90% chance he aggravates his injury, basically, according to his history. It'll just be, I would not feel confident playing him, and then it would just muck everything up. But I loved him in general if he was going to be healthy, but who knows? We will see. Let's talk quarterbacks. It's pretty wide open. Again, ownership-wise, I saw some people floating out some names like, I can't believe so-and-so is so cheap. Well, it's just a math game, right? And there's more quarterbacks. Nick's the only one currently in double digits at 13%. He's super cheap. He's got legs, and he's facing Carolina team total of around, 25, 26 or so. Tua does seem too cheap, assuming he's going to be come back and be fine. And I assume he's going to be like whatever the old Tua. But there's some really good names. Hurts, 5%. I'm just kind of scrolling down. Mahomes at less than 2% with all the revenge in the world. The Raiders were clowning on him in the offseason.
We haven't even talked about the Kermit narrative. I mean,
I'm bringing it up now.
Come on now, Dean.
He basically said, Mahomes, we're going to deal with it when the time is right. I think the time is right now. Mahomes, though, another guy who, by the way, is probably too expensive. He shouldn't be 6'8". He is fully stunk from a fantasy perspective. He's not been good. He's not been useful 1 week. But reputation's got to keep him up there as far as the price. The matchup, of course, really perfectly fine here against the Raiders. They got the addition of Hopkins. I don't know if you've seen anything as far as how much he's going to play. I imagine Andy Reid's playbook is probably a little bit tricky to learn. I don't know if he's going to play every single snap. He's kind of cheap at 4.9. We saw, just last week with Amari Cooper, who had 12 routes. When he was out there, they gave him the ball, but he only ran 12 routes. I don't know how much he's going to play, but I don't think I'm going to play Hopkins. Worthy, I guess, is interesting. You can play Kelsey too, but I do think we get a good Mahomes game finally. I don't know if it's like by his historical standard. I don't know if it's good enough to pay off his salary, but I do expect Mahomes to just stick it to this Raiders team.
I just ran 150 sims for large field just to see what I would get. Turn the randomness up a little bit. I didn't get any Mahomes. Oh no, I got 2%. Sorry, I got 2% Mahomes. And
he's not owned. So like the Sims pushes the stuff on players sometimes that are not owned, and even still not getting any bump. That's kind of telling. Bobby, you ran up, 7 or 10 quarterbacks that in your pool. Is Mahomes one of them?
Mahomes is one of them currently, yeah. I think Mahomes is interesting just because, they are – I wouldn't be playing DeAndre Hopkins, but I like Kareem Hunt a good bit, and he can work in the passing game. Kelsey, national tight end day, let's just run the narrative. I get Kelsey. Noah Gray, I think, is an interesting cheap option. The way he's been kind of working in it is his snaps have increased. Justin Watson, I don't know. You can try to double stack Mahomes. I feel like you would have to, but he's making my pool currently, but I don't think I'm going to get a ton, but he's not going to be owned. So it's easy to get 2x the field on him.
I ran the Sims as well, Tim. Interesting. I wonder if we got some. I don't know what you put as far as your parameters, but the most popular quarterback I got 12% Caleb Williams.
He's my number 2.
He's my 2 also currently.
How much do you think we need Daniels to play Caleb Williams? I think in order to make this game a better shootout potential, you kind of need Daniels on the other side, as opposed to Mariota, who's less likely to be as efficient. He's less likely to. He's going to be running more probably. They called a bunch of run plays for him. That runs the clock as well. Does that matter to you guys? Because I think if I'm going to play Caleb Williams, I much prefer Daniels on the other side. You guys agree with that?
For sure.
I agree with that.
Last report, though, for what it's worth, Daniels expected to play. That is, again, that's a 4:00 game, so we're not going to officially know that as the as the slate starts. You'll get it around 2:30 or so. But yeah, do we agree with that, Bobby? Is Caleb is he in your pool? I think he is. Ready-made pairing, I think Moore is the most obvious one. I guess you can play some Adudier and you can play some Allen if you want. But I think DJ Moore is the one you want if you have the salary, correct?
It is DJ Moore. Washington's going to play a ton of man. Moore's a man beater. Yeah, it would definitely be DJ Moore to pair with Caleb.
Herbert saying Daniels has 0 running. Yeah, I don't know. I who knows? Does that hurt? We're not talking about Daniels necessarily as a play, but yeah, in theory, part of the reason why you play Daniels, of course, is because of the legs. And you think he's going to run a little bit less? Maybe. I don't know.
I think if he's playing, he's running.
Why is he playing? Yeah, if he's not running, why is he playing?
If he's not running,
I agree.
If he's playing, he's going to be running. So, he's going to make my pool for what it's worth because I know you don't want to go back to the Noah Brown conversation, but I think Noah Brown, Zach Ertz, Terry McLaurin, these guys are going to be coming low owned just because he's not going to be hitting projections pretty much till the last. Well, he's hitting projections now, but he's not going to be hitting projections hard. None of these guys are really going to have a correct projection up until probably the last update. And by that time, people already have their pool set. It's a 4:00 game. I don't know. I think Washington's definitely in play today.
Bobby, if you were to could you give us your 5 favorite quarterbacks for the smaller dollar milli maker, the $20 milli?
I get Rodgers, Caleb, Jamus, Tua, and I'll go Burrow. I like Burrow today.
Yeah, so I would go Jamus, Tua, Burrow. I like Jalen Hurts quite a bit, and then I would go Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I like Kirk too.
Did I not hear Lamar?
I
didn't say Lamar.
Okay.
I will have some Lamar. I'm going to open up my quarterback pool. I will have some Lamar. It's probably more of a Henry game, I would imagine.
Yeah, I definitely have interest in Henry.
Yeah, Henry's the one that I want to get overweight on.
We saw it again where you can get away with pairing those guys together in the same lineup. They both can get ceiling games in the same game. I know what Henry caught a touchdown pass, which is kind of an outlier, but I think we've seen it a couple times this year. But they just put up 40 points. When you put up 40 points, you don't necessarily need your quarterback throwing the ball to your running back. But yeah, both, of course, fabulous plays. But, we do live in the world of a salary cap. Mr. Wessels is saying no Stroud. I mean, he's fine. The absence of Collins, I think, has really hurt him. He's still pretty expensive.
Stroud
Doesn't
hasn't really
move.
been that outstanding. I mean, all season, and you're not getting him right because of Mixon, and you're not getting Stroud at any kind of discount either. So I'm not too worried about Stroud. Like, obviously, yeah, he's a talented quarterback, but I don't really like him that much.
I think that game is interesting because Jordan Love and Stroud. I know they're in different games, but they're two quarterbacks that people aren't going to play for whatever reason, and like I could easily get like Stroud and Richardson. I like Richardson as a pivot off of Nix and Winston. I think he's interesting just because of the ceiling that he has in the Indy Houston game. And then the other one that we didn't mention was Love, and Love's not going to be played pretty much for the similar reason of Stroud, where people are kind of like, who do I pair him with?
And he doesn't run. But he does have ups. They both do have tournament winning upside.
I'd much prefer to play Jordan Love over Stroud.
It's a stupid question, but like, can you play Love by himself? Like, he can throw 4 touchdowns to 4 different guys, and none of his receivers get there. I know it doesn't really. That's not the kind of player, not the kind of quarterback you play a la carte, right? But it's something I've thought about, but any response?
The only all I would say is this is just my opinion. The only quarterback that I want to spend up on is Hurts.
Yeah,
I really like getting to Hurts and AJ Brown.
I mean, you don't make a lot of lineups, but
run it back
a certain number.
Run it back with Yoshi and or Chase. I love having Brown and Chase in the same lineup, especially if Higgins is out. So I mean that Hurts is like the only like high end quarterback that I have any interest in playing in single entry.
Yeah, I mean I have to. I still feel like I have to say Lamar in the conversation, but I hear you. I hear you. Apparently, according to chat, that is how the Millie was won a few weeks ago, according to Donnie. I guess he's talking about was it a Love by himself? Is that how the Millie was won? I don't really follow.
It was Love by himself. Yeah, it was Love by himself.
Yeah, and I don't know if that necessarily means see, because it's always small sample sizes we're dealing with, but I think it's possible. People
were basically poo-pooing the team, I guess, like they usually do.
I love that. It's like the embarrassment. It's nice to win $1 million, but the shame you get on Twitter, it's almost like it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's almost like
okay, Dean. All right,
Bobby, when you won your Millie, did people make fun of you?
Criticizing it would make it seem like it wasn't worth it, but what'd you say?
When you won your Millie, Bobby, did you get shamed for it? Did you have a terrible lineup, construction wise?
I had a really good team. I had a Rodgers double stack.
Who were the 2 receivers? I'm trying to remember who was his you memorized the team?
Cobb and Nelson. Yeah.
Jordy Nelson. I remember him. Yeah. Oh wow. It was like 4 years ago?
No, like
5 years
10
ago?
At this point.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize you won 10 years ago. I thought it was like 5 or 6 years. I don't remember the last time Nelson I guess he played for the Raiders after. Yeah, I haven't thought about him in a while. But all right. Yeah, but people weren't dunking on you on Twitter saying, "Oh, what a dope you are."
Well, it wasn't like the Jonas Gray play was probably getting dunked on, I would imagine, but it wasn't my team was built correctly. I wasn't in the DFS Twitter streets at that time.
So we're getting a Don Yeezy, who's reliable in the chat, letting us know T. Higgins uphill battle. So it's gone from hopeful, and now at night and in the morning it's uphill battle. I don't like that. To me, it doesn't sound like he's going to play. But what do I know? I'm just guessing. I have no clue. I'm not privy to the medicals. But to me, uphill battle suggests even if he were to go, possibly limited. But there you go. No point in speculating on that because again, we will have that news. But I'm working on the operation that Higgins is probably not playing this week. That's kind of where I'm at. Well, we didn't talk about Tua. Just Miami as a whole, because they are, one of my favorite teams. But the problem is, it's a huge slate. Huge. We're not going to get a bigger slate all season, I don't think. Maybe the last week of the season or something like that. But nobody's on bye. Not a lot of ownership, on many players, just because, again, the pie, the way it's cut up. But, Tyreek's going to be really popular. We're currently showing him for 25, 26%. I might take the over on that. Achan's going to be popular. Quarterbacks, whatever. They're all going to be less than 10%. So play who you want to play. But I think, too, maybe around 10% or so. What are we doing with Miami, Bobby? Miami as a whole, feel free to talk about Tua.
Yeah, Miami, Achan, and Tyreek are just phenomenal plays with their tags. I would try to get over on both plays. Tua is the one that the Tua stacks, I think, work. They're probably going to be chalky because now you can get Waddle at 5-4. I think an interesting way to kind of play them in your player pool is to add in a guy like Jonnu Smith. Yeah, Achan and Tyreek, I think, are phenomenal plays. Tua, I like a good bit. And, yeah, I'm definitely overweight to Miami.
Yeah, Tim, is that, how much does Tua matter? Obviously, the Dolphins have been putrid this season when Tua's been out. They were arguably the best offense last year in football last season. Good spot here to bounce back. It wasn't like a leg or an arm. Obviously, the head's really, really serious, especially long term. But I don't think the re-aggravation thought of unless, of course, he takes a big hit. But I would imagine he's going to do his best to avoid that. I like Miami. I'm a little bit concerned. We'll get to Hill soon enough, like how popular he's going to be. And he's kind of a home run hitter. And he also is dealing with a bit of an injury, despite the fact he told you to play him earlier in the week in fantasy. Dolphins as a whole, Tim, what's your official Miami Dolphins stance?
Yeah, obviously an amazing spot for him to come back. And the prices are so low on Achane, Waddle, and Hill. I think if you're going to play Tua, I think you almost have to do it as a double, just because he's not going to give you any kind of rushing upside. And that was a really good call by Bobby on Jonnu Smith at tight end. He's going to go super low owned, and that's a unique way of getting to a Tua double or even a Tua triple. So obviously the spot is fantastic. Tua showed up the sixth most of any quarterback when I ran the Sims, so that's pretty decent. I see him paired quite a bit as a double, so Sims are kind of agreeing with that take as well. So I like to see that. And I think Arizona is missing a ton of their best pass rushers. So in theory, Tua should have plenty of time to just sit back in the pocket and hopefully be super efficient to guys like Hill and Waddle, who have done absolutely nothing this year, and they must be getting incredibly frustrated. So I think there's a little bit of squeaky wheel here to get those guys the ball because they just have done nothing all season. So I think they're fantastic. I think Tyreek is certainly a cash game play. Achane is also, I think, a cash game play. So I think the Dolphins are really strong in all formats.
I could not believe last week coming off the bye, they had 0 targets for Waddle and Hill in the first half, and maybe 3 or so for the entire game. I am a McDaniel truther. I believe McDaniel's sharp. I know it's been a rough thing to defend the last month or so. Today, I think he's become sharp again. Today with Tua. We shall see. Anything else we should sort of note as far as quarterback? I would just say play I see people talking about ownership stuff. Knicks might be the one, you want a little apprehension ownership wise, but just otherwise play the guy you want to play. If you like Josh Allen's going to be 2%. Daniels, we currently have 0 because, I guess they didn't really think he was going to play. This, of course, adjusts soon enough. But I still don't think he's going to be more than 4 or 5.
I would say Nick still does sim well because I think because he has such strong rushing upside. So even if you wanted to play him in the $20 milli, I wouldn't hate it. I personally wouldn't do it, but I mean, I don't think he's a horrible play.
Joshua says, I see Tua heading into the blue tent the first time he lowers his helmet and do a linebacker again. I mean, I just don't think he's going to do that again. The play,
I think he will.
Who knows, right? There's instincts too when you're playing football. Like the play he got hurt on was a 4th and 2 and against Buffalo or whatever. He was trying to get a first down and 4th down, and I think he did get it. But, at what cost? The cost was too great. But, I think we'll see. Who knows? We'll see. But I imagine he's going to do his best to avoid any sort of serious contact. Bobby, are you afraid of Tua re-injuring himself today? Like, I'm not. Like, I'm just going to play him as if whatever. I think any other quarterback is just as vulnerable of getting knocked out today. Is sort of where I'm at.
Yeah, I think the risk is obviously there, but you got to play the slate, right? And I think he's going to play in the slate, so I'm fine with being overweight Tua.
No Geno love. Not really without Metcalf. I just can't get there. I don't make enough lineups. It's a no for me. Anybody have Geno in their pool? I don't think I've heard that name just yet.
No Geno.
Yeah, not officially ruled out, but I assume Metcalf's not going to play, and Bobo and Bobby. I heard you on your podcast talking about. I think you even said that you made this accusation. You said you're faster than Bobo. Is that? Do you want to double down on that? You think you're?
If he runs a 4.9, I'm faster than Bobo.
Even if he runs a 4.9, I think I'll still. I mean, Bobby, when was the last time you ran the 40?
College.
Okay. You think you could still knock out a 4.9 these days?
I'm fast, Dean. I'm fast.
This is not this is still an NFL player. I understand amongst all
4.9. There's linemen that run 4.9s.
I understand, but this is their job. Tim, who you got? You got Bobo, or you have Bobby in the 40?
Next RG party, we can break out the 40 and I'll run it. And
I'm gonna go Bobo for a ton of money for bricks.
Is he invited? You think he'll make it? We'll definitely give the Bobo invite and see if he's available to hang out. But yeah, I mean, look, maybe once upon a time, but he's also well, fair enough. I want to see this, so I think the Bobo side is the show.
I think you're underestimating like how slow a 4.9 is.
No, I understand. I understand that's not blazing. But fair enough. I didn't actually check weather. It's a good question from Don Easy. I don't think there is. I've seen nothing about weather. We haven't seen a lot of weather stuff basically all season long. I know it turns back half of the year. I'm pulling up a Ross article now. If I can find it. Do you guys have anything on weather? Is there anything weather related I should be aware of? There's the MLB weather. Why can't I find NFL weather? Tim, you got anything as far as NFL weather? Here we go. I found it. It is yellow in Seattle. Probably some rain. Yeah, periodic bands of heavy rain. Ever or else 10 to 50 miles per hour as far as wind in Miami. Okay, but it's green. I don't say anything. Basically, possibly some rain in Seattle, but that's comes to the territory. Long story short, I don't think it matters, right? Whether we're good to go. Yes,
it does. Yeah, there's nothing weather-wise that's matters, I think.
Do you want to mention, if you guys are not aware, RG Combo Lite? We're talking about the Sims Combo Lite. The newest product gives you the power of simulation for a fraction of the price of other tools. Less than $40. Combo Lite, $39 and change. It does include the SimLabs lineup building tool plus content from some of your favorites. DFS analysts. Combo Lite does not limit you to one sport. It is not just football. It includes the four majors for DFS: baseball, football, basketball, and PGA. Less than $40 again to get access to the Sims. Also want to shout out the Listener League. Do not forget to join the Listener League. Play alongside other viewers. Play alongside us. A chance to win. Not a week, not 2 weeks, not 3, not 4, kind of sort of somewhat for a month. A month free of RotoGrinders Premium. If you take down that contest, do check out the link in the description for an invite. It is limited, I believe, to I want to say 200. So make sure you get in there. And if you win that, again, a month free of RotoGrinders Premium, you're going to get all the sports and access to everything, the exception of NASCAR. NASCAR a la carte doing its own thing. Do also want to mention, lastly, Splash Sports. Splash Sports, if you're not aware, they are raising the game with their brand new Quick Picks contest, giving you a chance to win up to 12 times your entry. Pick more, pick less of any stack category, and build your entry lineups with at least 2 selections. It is now available in 34 states. Splash Sports, the ultimate platform for peer-to-peer fantasy and betting contests. Do challenge the RotoGrinders experts at splashsports.com/RotoGrinders. Use the promo code ROTO10 and get $10 credit when you join your first contest. Bobby, give me the opening as far as running backs. How do we feel about RBs today?
Yeah, running backs. I think it's basically trying to figure out what you're going to do with guys like Javonte Williams that are going to be very chalky, J.K. Dobbins. It's going to condense up top between Breece Hall, Devin A-Chain. I think you can throw Joe Mixon in the mix. But for me, like, making decision points on Javonte Williams and Dobbins is currently the highest priority. I'm definitely getting overweight on low-owned plays like Saquon, Kenneth Walker, and, well, Derrick Henry's not as low-owned anymore, correct? Like, I feel like he was lower-owned, and then it's probably steamed up a bit. But those 3 are going to be guys that I'm going to take shots on paying up for, and I think I might go I might fade Javonte Williams completely. Like, I don't really love that play. I might rather play Chuba on the other side for much lower ownership. That's currently where I have my RB pool.
So ownership, again, this stuff is going to change. I don't think there's been an update just yet. Last update we have is, I think, 8:30 in the morning. So there will be a new one coming. But Breece Hall, most popular running back today as of right now on DK, 31%. The aforementioned Williams, 28% for Denver. He's pretty cheap. An absolute perfect spot. Big time favorite at home against a putrid team, a bad offense as well running against them. So you have to imagine Denver probably lands in some good spots. As far as when they start their drives, Dobbins at 23% against New Orleans. Everybody's running on New Orleans. A-Chan at 20%. Connor at 15%. That seems a little high to me, but sure, I'm fine with Connor.
I love Connor today.
As like a run back in a Miami, or you just like him in general, just as like,
I think you could do both, but definitely as part of a run back. Like the Dolphins don't allow any kind of like fantasy points to quarterbacks, but definitely give it up quite a few running back points. So I really like Connor today. I think you're right. I think his projected ownership's a little high. And so that makes me like him even more, is that I think he's going to get squeezed a little bit here. So I think I'm not going to play him in cash, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to play Connor in my primary single entry team, just off of as a pivot off of one of these higher owned running backs, because I think Connor will be like around 15% in smaller field contests like what I play, not 15% like in the $20 milli. I think he's going to get much lower than that in the $20 milli. So maybe I pivot off of A-Chain or Dobbins or even Williams. So he's right around that same price point. So I think I am going to make him as a pivot in single entry.
We have Connor at 15%, Mixon about 15%, Jacobs at 13%. I think it's a better passing opportunity for Green Bay than it is a running opportunity, but I guess that's a leverage move, I suppose. Shouldn't even say that because I don't think it loves to be terribly owned. But historically, this season, people just throwing all over Jacksonville.
I thought you were going to talk about Pollard when you started talking about passing and running backs, because I think Pollard is a really strong large field GPP play at 6,500 in Detroit, a game that they should be trailing in quite a bit.
No Spears.
No Spears. I think Pollard's another one of those really, really great pivots, again, off of some of these much chalkier 6K running backs. Like in cash games, you're going to play Williams, you're going to play Breece Hall, and then you're going to play one of of Dobbins or Etienne, but in single entry, you don't have to play any of those guys. There's so many strong running back plays that you can get to. You could just maybe pick one of those three guys in your single entry team, and then pivot to some of these much lower owned spots. And even looking at their just projected fantasy points, they're not really outside of Breece Hall. It's a pretty close range in terms of fantasy points. Like Breece Hall is clearly the outlier with, we have projected for over 23 fantasy points, but everybody else is kind of in this, I don't know, like 16 to 19 range. So it's really just one big time outlier.
Bobby was talking about Henry around 10% or so. Of course, people always want to play Henry, but he's just a salary concern. So hard to get there, but home run hitter. I was watching Squirrel Show, and I think he said that Henry was minus 330 to score a touchdown, which is just,
wow.
I don't know if that has changed. Like, that's a terrible bet. Like, I wouldn't bet that, but like, he probably scores a touchdown. And he was like plus 165, maybe to score two. I'm checking right now. I want to see if it's changed or not. But the point is like, it feels like at least one touchdown is on layaway for Henry. Bijan around 10%. I saw somebody in chat mentioning Hunt. Yeah, I mean, he's been the guy for KC. You can dislike him or whatever, but
Hunt is so TD dependent, though. Like, I don't see Hunt doing anything like too explosive. And at that game, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a really, really slow paced game. I don't hate it, I guess, in large field GPP because he could score you 2 touchdowns. And I know it's going to be, Mahomes' revenge Kermit narrative. So, I mean, I guess he's okay, but I think there's far better plays in that same price range.
I just sort of told myself that, like, Mahomes is getting the touchdowns today. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I'm just guessing, but I'm probably not going to get the Hunt for that reason. Swift is another guy I see him thrown out there. Not going to be really owned. I like Chase Brown a good bit, a part of that Philadelphia Cincinnati game, especially if Higgins doesn't go. I like a little bit more. He's certainly been leapfrogging Zach Moss. Saquon, didn't mention him, 5%. It's just such a bummer. Like, again, we saw last week they had a chance to give him a couple of touchdowns against his old team, and they still did and I understand why they're doing the tush push. It makes sense. It works. Walker is another guy, 5%. Again, like, there's so many good plays that just, that got squeezed because the slate is so huge. But certainly, if you want to tell yourself a story on Seattle, if Metcalf is out, we're assuming he is, Walker has been more of a factor in the passing game. It's hard to get excited about their pass catchers, at least for me. Lockett is old. He immediately goes down when he catches the ball. Like, if anybody's within like 5 yards of him, he just gets right on the floor.
Smart.
Smart. Oh no, I'm not besmirching, but I understand he wants to have a great life beyond football.
Yeah, we did have a question in chat, like saying, like, if Metcalf is out, is GSN a lock? And I would say absolutely not. If anything, Kenneth Walker is the GPP play. And then if you want to like get like a lower on pivot, go to like, Bobby's boy, Jake Bobo, who's going to school in the 40-yard dash. So, I also think Noah Fant maybe is interesting as well, but I don't have any interest in GSN, or Lockett.
Yeah. It is a tight end week. I actually like a lot of tight ends this week, which is sort of strange. It's a weird thing to say. I feel like they've gotten better as the season has progressed. Tight ends. I know it was gross the first couple of weeks of the season, but we've even seen like Mark Andrews has come alive. I think there's a chance Laporta gets a little bit more loose today with the absence of Williams. I don't know. Of course, we talked about Otten and Joku looks spectacular. Bowers is on pace for like 110 catches or something goofy like that. I think tight end is actually a pretty good position today. I mean, it's famous last words. We'll get there in a second. Bobby, any of these 5%, 10% guys that kind of catch your eye? Speaking of Detroit, Gibbs 10%, like Bijan 10%. I'm not really in on Kamara. He just got paid. Good for him, but this does not seem to be a good spot. Nobody cares about Jonathan Taylor being back in our lives. He's back and nobody cares, but he's playing football today. Rashard White is hitting the Sims pretty positively, which is pretty interesting. Who wants to mess with a 3 running back situation? But I do think he's going to catch some passes. Bigsby is pretty clearly the guy now in Jacksonville. These are just all players that are not going to be rostered beyond more than like 7, 8, 9, 10%. Any of those guys you want to feature, Bobby? Any of us you want to add to the conversation?
Yeah. So for me, I think getting over on Saquon is a very good play. We know like he obviously has the ability to game break on any handoff. So I like Saquon a good bit. Kenneth Walker would be another one that I'd take a pretty strong stand on. Going to be over the field on him. Bigsby, when his projection gets to where it should be currently. What do we have for his projection?
Like 5%.
Yeah, Bigsby would be another one. I liked your Chase Brown call, especially if it's more dependent on Higgins. Like if Higgins is out, then I'm going to play Brown. Jahmyr Gibbs, he would be the Detroit running back, but I don't really like targeting this Tennessee defense. Today, I think it's more about where you're going to take a strong stand in terms of fades. Like whatever you're doing.
Who's that for you?
I think it's Javonte Williams. Like do not play. I would rather play Chuba than Javonte. Maybe those are my famous last words, but I think Chuba's I would prefer Chuba for less ownership in that game.
2%, by the way, Chuba.
Yeah. What are we? Josh Jacobs, like Green Bay versus Jacksonville. I could see him being unowned.
Around 11, 12%.
Oh, he's around 11, 12%. So,
yeah, I mean, this stuff might change a little bit, but that's where we currently have it.
Yeah, he would be another one I'd throw in there. Mixon's popular, but I think he's a good play. In terms of low-owned guys, maybe you could take a shot on what do we have for, like, how many snaps do we think Nick Chubb's going to see? What's his situation?
He was terribly inefficient last week, I'll say that. He did get in the end zone, and good for him. But
his snaps would come up, though. You would imagine his snaps are going to come up, right?
I would imagine so. Yeah, assuming they're not getting shellacked, right? We don't have a big projection on him.
Yeah, I'm trying to find his actual.
That's an extremely large field play.
We have him for 12 rush attempts.
Yeah.
I'd probably take the over on that, but
15?
It doesn't seem necessary.
I'd take the over on 12. Yeah. What if he gets 15?
But the thing is, I want to attack Baltimore in the air.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. And Chubb's not going to get you any kind of like receiving work out of the backfield either. Like, give me. I mean, I'm not trying to like besmirch Chubb or Bobby here, but I mean, I just want to. I want to play Jamus and like Njoku or Cedric Tillman. That's how I want to attack Cleveland.
Let's see. Dorsey. Yeah, Dorsey is taking over play calling, the former quarterback for the Miami Hurricanes. I think he's more pass happy. I think that historically that's what he's been. And that would make sense. He is a former quarterback. All right. We want to talk about the receivers as well. We want to talk about the cheap receivers. We kind of touched on them earlier. Probably more people have joined us as the show has progressed, so we can rehash that. Of course, in 20 minutes, I'm sure Squirrel, Erik, and Neil will touch on that as well. That feels like one of the biggest conversations as far as the slate. But I also, before we get to that, I wanted to talk about the high-end guys. And Bobby, you were talking about, and it's a good conversation, but maybe let's focus on the players we're not playing. Open up receivers, Bobby, and I want you to talk about Tyreek Hill. We currently have him at 25% owned, and sort of in jest, I was talking about him like not really being underpriced. Like he is and he isn't, right? Based upon his stats for the season, he should probably be cheaper, but based upon his history, he's really, really, really too cheap. And then it's easily explainable as why he's been terrible the last one. So yeah, Hill's going to be the most popular receiver by far on this slate. 25% currently. I think that's going to be going up. 7K just seems too cheap. If you look at the tags, basically everybody tagged him in lineup HQ. Receivers, Bobby, and are we taking a stand one way or the other on Tyreek Hill?
Yeah, I'm going to be overweight on Hill. 7K. Like, I just don't want to get the peace sign in my lineups. I think the one I would have an issue with would be Waddle on Miami, right? Like he is 5'4", but what has he really done in the last, I don't know, year and a half, right?
It's kind of hurt
with-
last year, but yeah.
Even with Tua in, like he hasn't done much. I'm currently getting a good bit of him, and I want to lower that. So I think Waddle would be someone I wouldn't mind coming underweight on if we're talking about guys that are going to be higher owned that I could see busting as chalk.
Tim, you're on those single entry streets with me as well. I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure I will. I'm not sure I have the sack to do it, but I'm thinking about not playing Tyreek like in a single entry contest because he's going to be like 50% owned there, maybe 60% owned there. And what does he do? Like, what kills me is sort of what I'm trying to figure out. Like, what like Bobby said, the peace sign. What buries me?
One play.
No,
One play. Yeah, it's one play.
No.
What are you talking about?
No, well, one catch for 80 yards and a touchdown does not bury me. I'm not.
Yeah,
dead.
but I mean, if he hits that, then you're gonna get buried because
If he hits that, you're getting buried. But
yeah,
well, you're assuming. What's the actual mean?
If he hits that, he's getting more than 1 for 80.
right? Yeah,
I said that 5 weeks ago when Nico Collins caught an 80-yard touchdown, and guess what happened?
He pulled his hamstring.
Yeah, well, okay. And is Hill injured or not injured going into this game? Is he hurting or is he not? Is he not in the injury report?
Oh man, don't do that. Don't listen to Dean.
Dean just gets more passive aggressive as the show goes on. Like
You're just telling me it's not possible.
Well, I don't know. It's pretty close.
But like 2 touchdowns and 150, and like then I'm buried. Okay, sure, I suppose. I'm thinking about it, and it's one way to be different. There's absolutely a chance that this Miami offense is still broken. It still stinks. Like that's possible. I think that's the better argument. Is that Tua doesn't come back like the same old Tua. I think that's the better argument. We have not seen Miami be functionables in like a month and a half, something like that. I don't know, man. This is not me arguing against. You guys understand. I'm not arguing against Tyreek Hill. I'm just trying to think. What do you got, TJ?
As we transition to receiver, there is oh my gosh, these stupid bots and things I got to delete as we go.
We got to watch the streams. They got to let us know where to watch the games at, right? Because none of us have Red Zone or access to
Sorry, I got distracted by that. Trey Palmer has scored a touchdown in 100% of games in which he has tweeted that he has woken up pissed off.
Is he pissed off today?
He is pissed off today.
He is.
Why is he pissed off?
I don't know, but that is worth taking into projections that Trey Palmer has in fact woken up pissed off.
This is going to be one of those overblown narratives.
Pissed off.
This is going to be an overblown narrative, and people are going to be at the end of the day, why did I play Trey Palmer? Because he said he was.
They're going to be pissed off.
They're going to be pissed off. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they're going to be pissed off that they played Trey Palmer.
I put him in my lineup on FanDuel that I built before the show. He's 4K on FanDuel. 4K receiver on FanDuel can be really useful.
That's pretty. I mean, between him at 4K and Kincaid at 4K, you can basically play whatever you want on FanDuel.
That might be the same lineup.
It could be.
Yeah. You can have some fun over there for sure. So, Tim, you're playing. Are you playing Hill? And you tell me. Single entry stuff? You're just going to play him?
I'm 100% playing him in cash games.
Sure.
I'm thinking about, I don't know, considering fading him in single entry and either going with a Hurts Brown kind of pivot or a Burrow Chase Yoshi kind of pivot. So
you're in my brain, Tim.
I mean, there's definitely, and also, I also don't even mind Drake London in this Tampa Bay game that I think is going to be like a really, really juicy game for fantasy points. So there are certainly viable pivots. But yeah, it's terrifying. I think he can so easily just smash this price tag. Like it's a pretty scary fade. But there are certainly wide receivers that can match his ceiling for sure.
Do want to touch on some tight ends in a second. We got Erik and Neil and Squirrel coming in about 10 minutes or so. But let's give the rundown one more time. I know several people have talked about it in chat. TJ wanted us to focus on it. I think it's one of the bigger conversations for the slate. Tim, your favorite 4K or less receiver on DK. Last week we had basically nobody. This week you can tell your story on a bunch of guys. You want to give me your top 3 or top 4 less than 4K receivers on DK?
Top 3 or top 4? Okay. I would go McMillan, Shepard, Tillman. I think those are definitely my top 3. And then it's either Palmer or Bobo. But
did you hear Palmer's pissed off? I don't know if that's changed his rankings.
No, I know. And then I also forgot about Yoshi. So maybe I'd go McMillan, Yoshi, Shepard, Palmer.
Bobby, how about yourself? And if you can also give me your least favorite. Who's your least favorite amongst that group? But give me your favorite amongst those guys. 4K or less, 3 or 4, Bobby. Your favorite cheapies on the board.
Yoshi, Tillman, McMillan, Palmer, Bobo. And Bobo would be my least favorite. Yeah,
I'm trying to see who else we could enter. I'm trying to see we didn't talk about the Carolina guys, but I think they're behind. I don't think the Detroit guys are mentioned.
They're clearly behind that group. Yeah, like Tim Patrick is definitely viable. I have no issue if people want to play him.
I actually do not hate Tim Patrick. I bump him ahead of Bobo. I'm gonna X Bobo. That's just
he's looked all right. When he's out there, he hasn't been. Yeah, I think he's pretty competent.
I can't play.
He's projecting for 2% ownership too. Patrick is, so I mean he's going to be significantly lower owned than Yoshi Voss and the Tampa Bay crew.
Philip is asking who is Yoshi. Yeah, that's Andre Yoshivas. We like him under the assumption that Higgins is not playing football today for Cincinnati. He would elevate to the second receiver, and he's been a red zone target this season as well. Okay, let's touch on tight ends. We've talked about the Kincaid 4K on FanDuel, which I think is really interesting. We talked about Johnny was a play, National Tight End Day. Like I said, I think it's really, really strong. Otten, not the most athletic guy, but he should see a ton of targets. That certainly plays on DK. A bunch of catches. Njoku was a hero for me last week. We're expecting them on the comeback against Baltimore. Baltimore secondary is ravaged. You throw the ball against Baltimore. This seems like a really, really obvious spot where Jamus is just going to rear back and throw 40 times. Bowers, just a plethora of catches this season. Again, over 110. If you extrapolate that, still waiting for the big McBride game. Maybe it's this week. I don't know. If we buy into the Mahomes narrative, Kermit Street, this could be the week that we could see Kelsey getting loose. Calcaterra, supposedly, you can tell yourself a story last week, but Philly barely threw the ball. They had 15 or 16 pass attempts. Maybe it's this week. I don't feel great about it. He's another one of those plotters, but he's going to be the tight end that's out there for Philly, and he's cheap. Maybe he falls in the end zone. Tim, give me the rundown. What do you have as far as tight ends? Anybody sort of stand out to you amongst that group? Did I miss anybody? I think it's pretty strong considering the history of tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, we've waited for a big tight end week all season, it feels like. Cade Otton is definitely the chalk cash game piece. He should play pretty much every single snap because that's what he does all year, and that's definitely going to do that today. So Cade Otton at 3,500 probably is going to be your cash game guy. Like I said earlier, and Njoku is fine as well if you have that extra 1,600. Brought Bowers and GPPs at under 10%. Have no issue with that at all. I'm not going to Calcaterra. I just think that there are better plays. I don't think you really necessarily have to do that this week. I really like Jonnu Smith in GPPs as a unique way of building into Miami. So I think he's pretty interesting. I think Noah Fant is also a decent play. But I mean, I feel like this Evan Ingram, Tucker Kraft, Sam Laporta range is going to go very, very, very underowned, and I think they do have some GPP appeal just because we know that all of them have ceilings. Same thing with McBride. Other than Kraft, though, we just really haven't seen it this year. So same thing with Kincaid. I mean, this kind of like 5K range of tight ends outside of Njoku, I think is going to go really, really underowned and are pretty solid large field plays.
I ran SimLabs and optimal versus projected ownership. The ones that are popping, Tucker Kraft, Dalton Schultz, who hasn't really been talked about. The ones that really don't pop, Otten, it looks really like a terrible play in tournaments. When you consider optimal versus projected ownership, I understand why people are going to land on Otten, though. It does make sense. Laporta, by the way, the fourth one, which I think, again, there was different times last year where Jamus was out. For Jamo was out for Detroit, and maybe we finally see Laporta get a little bit more here for Detroit. Bobby did mention not really wanting to pick on Tennessee. I do respect that defense, and I don't know how much Tennessee offense is going to push Detroit's offense. So maybe Detroit just runs the ball like 40 times like Gibbs and Montgomery. We'll see. But Laporta, guy, just completely lost in the slate. What do you have here, Bob, as far as adding to the tight end conversation?
Yeah, in tournaments, I think I'm fading on. Some cheap plays that I like. I like Eric All for Cincinnati a good bit at 2,600. I think he's really interesting for tournaments, especially if you like Burrow. I'm kind of bullish on Burrow today. I will say Hunter Henry for the New England Patriots. I think he's an interesting run back if you're running Rodgers stacks. He's someone I want to get overweight on. Like him and Douglas are seeing the majority of the targets here in that offense, and I would imagine they're going to be trailing a name that no one wants to click, Kyle Pitts at 4,400. He's really assumed more of a role in the last couple of weeks in that offense. I think that's fine to get to him. Tyler Conklin at 3-4. Always been a safety valve of Rodgers. Now Rodgers has Devontae Adams, but Conklin has been a guy who's killed the Patriots in the past. So I don't mind him. The Laporta call, a national tight end day at 4,800. He hasn't done anything all year. Let's just play the narrative, right? Like maybe this is it, Njoku is the best tight end on the board by far. Like you should be playing Njoku today. What do you guys think about Evan Ingram? Do you have any thoughts on Ingram? What are you guys planning on doing? I don't know what to do with Ingram.
I'm getting him the fourth most out of any tight end when I ran Sims. That whole Ingram, Kraft, McBride, that whole range, I think is incredibly strong, especially when people are going to be clicking Njoku in that range. So I really like Ingram as a tournament pivot. I'm not really sure if you have to like necessarily pair him with Lawrence. I think you can just play him as a one-off. I think that you could play Love with Tucker Kraft. I think that's one way building into that game. We talked about how, we really like Love in large field GPPs. So I don't mind Ingram at all.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I currently want to do with Ingram at 5K because, like you said, guys like Laporta are going to be low owned. Who else is in that range? You said Tucker Kraft. I think he's a good play. Like, I think I'd rather go to those guys, maybe up to McBride as a run back in Miami. If Ingram's going to be chalky.
Ingram's not going to be chalky, though, I don't think.
He's not going to be chalky?
I think he's just going to fall in that range. Like, Njoku's going to be the clear and overwhelming chalk in that 5K range. And then I think all these guys are going to fall pretty hard. I mean, it depends on what contest you're in. But, I mean, Njoku's going to be the clear and obvious one. I think a lot of people might even want to spend up to Bowers as well. So I think guys like Ingram, McBride, Laporta, Pitts, they're all going to be relatively low owned.
Okay, so I'll leave Ingram in, I guess. Dalton Schultz at 4,100. Do we have interest there?
I personally don't, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to. You know what I mean? Like he's fine. I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in that situation. I don't like what I've been seeing from Stroud either. So I don't know. I don't really love Schultz today.
So Otten about 20% and Njoku about 16%. Those are the two most popular tight ends. I wanted to see, I know TJ is probably rounding up the next group in a second, but TJ, noted Saints fan, several people in the chat have mentioned Taysom Hill. He had that rib. I don't think I'm getting there. You can always sort of tell your story about Taysom, but TJ, I know you run a bunch of lineups. The Saints, that's your team. Is this something we're doing today? And this is just DK specific, right? Because I think, actually, I don't know what he is on FanDuel. TJ, what do you got as far as Taysom? Any interest?
No, I don't have any of them. There's just too many other plays that I'm interested in getting to. I'm worried about the Saints offense scoring a lot of points. They do have some, like, Olave's back. They're getting, I believe it's Ruiz back today. And so they're getting some offensive line help. They got Olave, but I still just, like, he's fine. He's $3,900. He's fine. And if you land on a $3,900 tight end and you need somebody, I don't think you switch up your team. I think you just play Taysom, but he's not somebody I have in any of my lineups personally.
All right. Next group should be coming in here shortly. We got to end strong here. Bobby, unless you have a defense take, I know that's one of your specialties on your podcast. Anything defensively, by all means, like Denver is going to be, people can get there. Certainly you're thrilled to do that. Baltimore, we would talk about Jamus. We love Jamus. We also love playing against Jamus as well. Chargers look pretty good, taking on TJ's Saints. Don't mind the Texans against Indianapolis as well. Richardson has looked, I know he's got all the super athletic, but he's looked pretty raw, pretty rough these days. Any lean defensively, or do you want to just give me your favorite stack of the day or hot take or however you want to interpret that?
I think the Dolphins D is pretty interesting. Not getting any ownership versus Kyler, like correlating it with Achane if you're not playing Tyreek in the lineup. Favorite play the slate, favorite stack, probably be Burrow to Chase. I think that's my biggest lean currently. Last week we whiffed on the segment completely. We had Tank Dell and he bageled.
Well, you can only go up from here.
Last week was my worst week ever. Like, it was so awful.
I think it was so bad for everyone. Yeah,
it felt like a baseball.
It was my best week of the year.
Oh, really?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, great. I had so many zeros in my lineup. It was like, what is going on here?
I remember, we were talking about it on the podcast, and I was thinking to myself, like, what did I do last week? And I just must have totally wanted to erase it from my mind, because my highest exposure QB was Jaden Daniels, and my highest exposed player was Tank Dell. So
go to bed.
Week, yeah.
Fire up Netflix. All right, we've been here for 2 hours. We got to bring in a new crew. Let's go ahead, and they are assembled. So let's go ahead and bring in the final tournament takes pod right now. All right, here they are. It's Squirrel Patrol. We got Erik Beimfohr as well. Neil's hanging out. And but Neil, people have been comparing. Several people have thought that Tim was on the stream. I don't know if you guys have got that. Have you compared? Can you tell me, are you guys aware that this is a thing? Have you heard this before, Neil?
I have seen the references on the show that we look similar. He doesn't wear a hat though, so or flannel. I mean, so.
Oh no, that's not true, Neil.
Well, on the shows you don't.
No, I do.
Oh, okay.
I do. Yeah, I
Thanks for watching and supporting the show.
Yeah, thank you, Neil.
All right.
I loved it. I loved it when Neil wrote in chat, "Who is Tim?" I felt really good. I felt really good.
They didn't specify a last name, and also I associate.
Would it have mattered, Neil? Would it have mattered?
I mean, yeah. I mean, once people said your last name, then I knew who they're talking about. Yeah. Okay. Fair.
He knows TastefulTides. We all know TastefulTides.
It's a very common first name.
This is fair. All right, Erik, we're waiting for some news. We're waiting for Higgins. I'm curious to hear last week we talked about Coker as a 3K cheapie. I don't think we have to talk about this week because there's a plethora of stories. You can tell stories on 10 different guys. as far as these like 3 to 4K TP receivers. Many of them probably going to fall on their face, but I'm curious to hear where you guys are at. That is the slate, right? Erik is trying to figure out which amongst this nonsense is going to rise.
It's sad. It's much more fun when we can talk about the Jalen Cokers of the world and the Jake Bobos when they're, when it's not like a totally relevant and reasonable play. Not saying Jalen Coker is. Add him to the list of total near goose eggs last week. I also blocked last week from my mind. Thank God for NBA and stuff being back to wipe that one away, because that was rough. But this feels like an NBA slate. Speaking of NBA, with all the kind of quote unquote value, and figuring out what to do with some of these backup wide receivers, which is very different than the backup running backs.
We're gonna get out of here, but lastly, I do want to ask you that we were talking about this in the show, and I know Neil was watching, but I don't know if Erik and Squirrel, if they were watching or not. Bobby says he can run faster. He can outrun Bobo in the 40. Do you guys believe this?
Bobo ran like a 4.8, so it's like I don't know how fast.
No, 4.9. 4.9. If we 4.9, I'll give the extra point of a second there. 4.9. I can beat the 4.9.
You need that.
When's the last time you had timed yourself, Bobby? Like 10 years ago?
I'm athletic. I
Okay.
do. Yeah. I'm fast. Yeah. So I would imagine I could beat it.
So Bobby, you and I need to race then, because I can still run a little bit, and we can both. We'll have the RotoGrinders. Can we beat Jake Bobo in a 40?
I like that. Yeah, we could do that.
I'm
played
gonna
corner,
concede.
right, Erik? Weren't you a corner or a safety?
Yeah. I played DB. Yeah.
There you go. All right, myself and Tim and Bobby, we do thank you guys watching the first portion. Do hit that like button. I saw where you're egregiously low as far as the likes. I don't want to beg or grovel, but come on, really, what's the effort here? What else are you doing with your hands? Go ahead, hit that like button. Do subscribe. Do turn on those notifications. Erik, take it over.
I'll beg and grovel. Hit that like button before we get going. But of course, thank you guys for joining us. Welcome to GPP Final Takes, aka GPP Flannel Takes. And I'm your host, Erik Beimfohr, as you see here on your screen, joined by two of the best DFS players on the planet. And we are going to kind of cover all of the most relevant topics for tournaments. We're not necessarily going to go game by game or position by position. However, we will end up kind of touching on, I don't know about today. There's a lot last week we kind of flew through the fact that we could discuss Jalen Coker for more than like 12 seconds. Told you about last week, I think. This week, there's a lot to diagnose. So we'll try to get to everything that is relevant for tournaments, every relevant player. If you have a question that you would like answered, please put that in the chat. I'll keep tabs on it. We'll try to hit as many of them as we can kind of in the midst of the conversation. And of course, if we don't get to them, Crunch Time will be up after us and they will get you all squared away leading up until lock. I agree, guys. I agree with Dean. I think this whole, I'll say two things. This whole slate starts with the fact that there are so many injuries, but to wide receivers, if normally we're like, the starting running back's out. And so what do we do with the backup running back? That is not the case this week. Although there are a lot of strong running back plays, it's all of these Jalen McMillans and Cedric Tillmans and Jake Bobos and like all these guys at wide receiver stepping into starting roles. And how do you handle them on any individual team, but of course across your portfolio of teams? And then I think we'd be remiss if we said Tua Tagovailoa coming back and the Dolphins pricing not being adjusted for Tua being back is kind of the 1B to me on this slate. What do you do with those guys? So John, I guess, do you agree with all of that? And then how are you kind of processing those most important issues?
Yeah, the first thing that actually jumped out on the slate to me was how many games there are. It was like egregiously late looking at this slate just because of NBA starting, and then the World Series is starting, and then we had an early fight time for UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi. So I really didn't start looking at the slates until Friday morning, right? Because I'm doing Thursday night football stuff. Then Friday morning, I'm like, where did all these games come from? There's no game in London, there's no buys, and then we got all this value, all this wide receiver value. I think the best wide receiver value on the slate is Tyreek Hill. It's not really the 3K guys. The guys that I'm probably going to have the most on my rosters, and I'll still probably be under the field is Tyreek Hill. So yes, it's Tyreek Hill, and then I kind of have an order in my mind for these guys. Like I probably like Cedric Tillman the most, and then Jalen McMillan. They're all obviously a little bit thin, and I might make an effort to just and there's so many of these guys. Like just pick whichever 3K wide receiver is paired with your quarterback. It's almost like tight end. We have like a 3K wide receiver position now. Pick your guy that pairs with your quarterback, and just move on.
Yeah, wide receiver 3 is the pick your 3K wide receiver that you like the most for this lineup. Neil, how are you feeling about these wide receiver cheapies, and of course the Dolphins with Tua back?
Yeah, I mean, well said by John that Tyreek Hill is probably the best wide receiver value on the slate. I think I'll probably have more than the field. Currently being projected for around the quarter of the field playing Tyreek Hill. I don't think that's enough, just given his floor and his ceiling. So I think I'll be even heavier than that on Tyreek Hill.
That feels light.
Awesome.
That feels light.
It feels a little bit light. Yeah,
especially depending upon the turn. So always take that's large field, right? Projected ownership stuff, depending upon the field you're playing in, adjust for your smaller fields or higher stakes or whatever. I will say even in like the Millie Maker, 25% feels a little light to me for Tyreek Hill, but I could be wrong about that.
Yeah. Jalen Waddle also, I mean, he's not somebody that I have talked about a ton. Like I'm not as excited about him as Tyreek Hill, but coming in at significantly lower ownership. So actually, never mind. He's coming to 18.5% now. So he's come up a little bit less interest now. I probably won't be over the field there. And then Devin Achane obviously looks pretty awesome. Also coming in around 20% ownership. We've just seen how good he can be with Tua. So mispriced also. Again, of the Dolphins guys, Tyreek Hill definitely the standout from a fantasy point per dollar standpoint. And then the cheap guys, I'm still figuring it out. Like I said, I agree with John that like none of these cheap guys are actually as good of values as Tyreek Hill because none of them have real safety. The Bucs, you're kind of getting mixed signals from the Bucs about like the Jalen McMillan usage. I mean, the coaches have said nobody's going to not one player is going to fill that Chris Godwin role, which I believe, but they're also hyping him up, telling him this is your week. This is the week, we need you to break out. So I like Jalen McMillan quite a bit. Cedric Tillman, spoiler alert, I'm going to play a lot of Jamus this week, so I'll probably have a lot of Cedric Tillman also on some of those Jamus teams. I don't actually know which one I like better in a non-Jamus lineup. If I would prefer Cedric Tillman over Jalen McMillan, it's honestly pretty close. Now we have the Yoshi play opening up with T. Higgins probably out today, so that's kind of interesting. I don't have a clear favorite of it's kind of a spray and pray for me with the 3K wide receiver range.
That's how I feel too. And so I kind of agree with what both of you said and like what John said, that it's going to be very lineup dependent. I think that's actually like really important for this slate, is people will say like, which 3K wide receiver do you like the most? And it's like, well, they all suck. So let's play the team that when they're actually good today, it benefits the most, right? I don't want to just toss them all in a bin and roll them out and kind of see what happens. The chat, I was going to bring this up later, but we might as well get into the gal braining of the show right away. Tua's back and all this Dolphin stuff is going on. And I agree with you guys. I think that's the most important thing to discuss. And you mentioned even Jalen Waddle's picking up some ownership now because he's so cheap on DraftKings, and Achane and Tyreek are going to be very popular. And no one mentioned Raheem Mostert. 21 touchdowns last year for old Raheem Mostert. And I know Achane's taken a bigger role, et cetera, et cetera. I get all of that. But is there any interest for you guys in Raheem Mostert at all in your tournament portfolio? And then what about that game, right? If we're really, really high on the Dolphins, I'm particularly high on James Conner, but what about that game in general, John?
I'll be honest, I hadn't thought about Mostert at all. He wasn't even on my radar. I'm a little bit hesitant about going berserk with the Dolphins, and part of that might just be because I'm going to have like an uncomfortably large amount of Tyreek Hill. Like I said, he's probably going to be my highest owned wide receiver. I'll probably be under the field. I'm assuming he's going to see like 40%.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The implied point total is much higher than it has been for Miami. It's 25 points. It's still like 3 touchdowns and a field goal-ish. So I'm hoping one of those touchdowns goes to Tyreek Hill. Devin Achane probably gets another one. And then maybe like Waddle, Johnny Smith. I don't know. there is some concern. I might be more concerned. I know they brought this up on the show before ours. The idea of like Tua getting re-injured. I don't know. Like I feel like each concussion leads to you being more susceptible to future concussions. I don't want to think about it, but it's in the back of my head. I don't know. And any kind of injury, I think I'm gonna have so much Tyreek Hill that I'm like scared about having more exposure to the Dolphins beyond Hill.
Neil, what do you think about the Mostert or just the Dolphins collectively? Because I think it's fair concern, right? It's scary, the Tua thing. And then why did he have to go out and do the I'm never gonna do the Guardian cap, I'm Mr. Tough Football guy, whatever. But which didn't make me feel any more comfortable about him. But he did go. We did this 2 years ago with Tua when he had the gnarly concussions, and then he went like a year and a half without another concussion, and we had forgotten about it until this year. So just wrapping up the Dolphins, and then anything on the Cardinals in terms of that game for you.
Yeah, I struggle with the Tua thing because people are like, well, this is a clear like reaggravation risk, but it's like it feels like less so than like a hamstring where it's just running around you could reaggravate. Like he needs to get hit hard in the head is the only way he's going to reaggravate a concussion. So I don't know. I go back and forth on like the likelihood of that happening. I think it's kind of a little bit less of a re-injury risk than something like a hamstring or an ankle or whatever. The Raheem Mostert is an interesting play to me, and you guys probably don't know this about me. I play backup running backs or RB2s on the team way more than I probably should. Or you don't hear people talk about RB2s on teams very often, the like galaxy brain. But because I played the Millie Maker, it is often a way of like, well, there is a clear path to this player just having an awesome role. And Raheem Mostert, I do think makes sense. Like he is oftentimes for me, it's like guys it's generally players who have some standalone value and then awesome contingent value. And Raheem Mostert obviously fits that bill. And also usually they are in, the best kind of matchups where there's going to be leverage. Like everybody's going to play the RB1s who get leverage. So Raheem Mostert is exactly that. Like you get tons of leverage on Devin Achane. He has a clear path to, if something happens to Achane, he's just going to be a smash. He's a little bit more expensive though, is the only thing that is, not the typical in that he is 5,900. So like, he's not actually a smash. Even if Devin Achane is out, he wouldn't be like, he would be extremely highly owned, but he wouldn't be like a guaranteed win. Anyway, yes, I think he is very much a like Millie Maker style play where nobody is on him. He's leverage on Devin Achane. I think it's viable. He's not something who has been like a priority for me, somebody I've been thinking about a ton, but he's been brought up on past shows that I've been on. And I think, he kind of fits that build of the backup running back who I would consider in a Millie Maker style contest. Similar to like Jaleel McLaughlin is one that I gave as the example of this week is
nice. Yeah.
Might make sense in that role because he's cheap. Everybody's playing Javonte Williams, so he clearly has leverage on the Javonte Williams, some standalone value, and then obviously has some contingent value. Autoc estimate might eat into that a little bit. But yeah,
not if he keeps fumbling.
True, very, very true. So he would, kind of be. I think I would rank Jaleel above Raheem Mostert as far as my favorite RB2 on the slate. But it's really just like a Millie Maker style play. I wouldn't play Raheem Mostert, I think, in a field of 1,000. Probably. I think it would probably have to be a larger field than that for me.
Makes sense. I will just shout. I genuinely really like James Conner on the other side of this game as like a way to, you want to do the little Dolphins thing and then play Conner instead of Javonte or instead of Dobbins or instead of Brees or something like that. I mean, James Conner, I don't get it really. Like you watch him play and you're like, he's moving so slow. And he just keeps breaking tackles and no one can ever bring him to the ground. He's like dollar store, really crappy Derrick Henry that these guys just can't tackle him. He keeps running for yards. He's kind of game script proof because he's a good receiving option out of the backfield. And I think that this game is certainly much more appealing with Tua in there. I see everybody in the chat. We're all concerned about Tua, but it is what it is. I'm concerned about a lot of things. I'm concerned about a whole lot of things, particularly, the Browns wide receivers that we might be playing, or the fact that Jalen McMillan never scores any fantasy points and he's going to be really, really chalky. So lots to be concerned about. I'm not super concerned about the Miami Dolphins. Let's talk about these Browns. Let's talk about the Browns, John, because let's get let's get some of the gross stuff out of the way. Concussions and Browns pass catchers, but of course everybody knows Deshaun Watson out Jamus Winston, we're probably lucky. I don't know if it's lucky or not. We'll find out in a couple hours. DTR is also hurt, and so T. Higgins now officially out. So we'll talk about Jamar Chase and co here in a second. Cedric Tillman stepped into the starting lineup after the Amari Cooper trade last week. I think he's probably the first guy to start with because he's very cheap and had a whole lot of targets. Now, they did throw the ball a lot last week in Cleveland, so the target share wasn't maybe as indicative of the raw target volume, but he's out there for like every play on the outside, kind of air yards guy, David Njoku, etc. John, what do we do with this? Because they are playing the Ravens, and the Ravens give up a lot of fantasy points to opposing pass games, but it's kind of, this is a crappy Browns team against a really good Ravens team. How far do we take it with this air quotes value?
So yeah, I guess anything can happen, but it seems like a clear way this game is going to play out. Well, I guess I know how it's going to start playing out, and then I don't know what the result is going to be. Because like the Ravens are like an extreme defense. They allow the most passing yards per game in the NFL, the fewest rushing yards per game in the NFL. So that gives us an idea of how the Browns are going to try to attack. They have Jamus Winston, who last time we saw him as a full-time starter was 2018 when he threw 30 interceptions in the season. That was the most since 1988 to Vinny Testaverde. And I think after Testaverde and Jamus Winston, you have to go back to like the 60s to find somebody who threw 30 interceptions in a season. So like that's a lot of interceptions. So I love the Ravens defense actually for a touchdown. But I got to play some Jamus Winston too, and because he's got a trio of really underpriced wide receivers. Like now, Amari Cooper is gone, so Winston himself is really cheap, and they have all these receivers. I like Cedric Tillman probably the best. Like Cedric Tillman's probably the one that I'll play as like even in other lineups that don't like feature this game. But I don't mind the idea of playing Winston with Tillman and David Njoku. I think is also like one of the top tight ends on the slate. And then, you can pair him with like Derrick Henry or maybe like a cheaper Baltimore receiver like Rashad Bateman or one of the tight ends. I don't know. Yeah, I like the idea of getting to Winston. He's going to be one of the quarterbacks that's very much in my pool, but so is the Ravens defense. So
same lineup
yeah.
in the same lineup. I know people have legitimately touted this, and it sounds absurd, but this is maybe the one situation that I don't think it's totally crazy.
It's probably not crazy. I'm probably not going to go there.
Yeah, me
but I do. I mean, I like the idea of pairing Derrick Henry in the Ravens defense. I like the idea of like playing Derrick Henry in a Jamus Winston lineup. So like, why would I not do Jamus Winston, the Ravens defense, and Derrick Henry? I don't know. I'm morally opposed to it, but I understand if other people like give it.
Right. We have to stand for something, but you understand why other people don't stand for that thing that you're standing for. Neil, let's get into the Browns. Are we all doing the Jamus thing or what?
We are all doing it. Sounds like we're all doing the Jamus thing. Jamus just not projected for a ton of ownership. Actually, I'm curious if that has come up at all, because literally every piece of content that I have done, and of course I'm partially to blame for this, but I'm pretty sure everybody that I've done shows with likes Jamus at least to some extent. Still projected for 6% ownership. I would be sort of surprised, just given how much content has liked Jamus, if he actually comes in at 6%. He just doesn't project extremely well point per dollar, so people using optimizers probably not landing on Jamus a ton, which is helpful to keep the ownership in check. But more people using Sims these days, everybody talking about it. I think he probably comes in higher than he is projected for at the moment, like might come in at double-digit ownership. I still think that's probably fine though. Like I just think he's playing the Ravens, who give up all the passing yards, the most passing yards per game in the entire NFL. He is not afraid to sling it. His receiving options are all, I think, mispriced a little bit for their role without Amari Cooper and with Jamus in. Like everything looks pretty good for them. It obviously can fail. Like we know that this can fail. Jamus can throw 3 interceptions, not really get anything going, not sustain any drives. Like there are ways for it to fail, but for large field GPPs, I still think he's going under-owned, has massive upside. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to see what the Browns look like with Jamus Winston in there. We're doing it. I'm playing a lot of Jamus.
You should be excited because it's not going to be boring. It may not be a lot of scoring, but it's not going to be boring. I can tell you that much. I'm very interested in the Browns thing. I see everything that everybody else sees. I have like maybe a tick more concerned than normal. The free-spirited me that plays really, really crappy quarterbacks all the time would do. I just think the Browns are really bad. It wasn't just Deshaun Watson, right? And it wasn't just DTR. And like you said, Jamus is fun, but also Jamus hasn't really played NFL football in a long time. This isn't like peak Jamus, and even peak Jamus, as John alluded to, was pretty all over the place. Like he threw for a bunch of yards over a season, but that didn't mean every single game was good. The Ravens have given up a lot of passing yards. They played some pretty good teams. Like they're playing a top-ranked schedule, right? So we're talking about the Chiefs and the Cowboys and the Bills and the Bengals and the Bucks, right? The full-strength Bucks. Like this is a lot of the best passing offenses in the NFL. In those teams are typically in negative game scripts, right? So they're throwing a lot. James is definitely going to be in a negative game script is our expectation. I just don't know that Jameis is going to do what, Dak and Burrow and Baker do in those kinds of situations. So I have some small concerns. We'll definitely keep that in mind. The chat has been asking we should do the 3K wide receivers. Let's just go through them. I know we mentioned that, we should put them into the teams kind of that make the most, right? So Tillman on the Jameis or Derrick Henry teams or whatever. But if you did have to kind of rack and stack these 3K wide receivers, John, who would be, if you're picking one, so we got a bunch of them, right? The Bucks guys, the Browns guys, Jake Bobo, now Andre Yoshivas, whatever. How are you prioritizing the value wide receivers?
So we're counting Yoshivas as like he's 3,600, the 3K ish.
Yeah, yes, count. Yep.
So assuming Higgins is out, I think Yoshivas is maybe the best. I think he's got the most secure role. Like that's a good game to get to. I like getting to that game even when Higgins was playing. So I think Yoshivas first. I think then probably McMillan first from I guess he's 3,700. Yeah. So probably Yoshivas first, McMillan second, then Cedric Tillman, then Palmer, then Sterling Shepard, Tim Patrick, Elijah Moore, Jake Bobo, and
because Jamo's also out. Jamo is also out with another suspension. Guys all over the place.
Actually, and I'll throw Khalif Raymond in on the end.
All right, Neil, break down the 14 or 15 different 3K-ish wide receivers in your preference.
Yeah, there's just too damn many of them. I think I would rank Jalen McMillan first of the group. Just love the upside, the possibility that he's the wide receiver one there in Tampa. Some of the coach speak promising enough that I think it's kind of fun. I don't know, maybe it's pretty close between McMillan and Yoshivas. I do think like those two are the clear top for me. I would just go slight preference for McMillan over Yoshivas. And then beyond those two, it gets a lot hazier for me. I think Trey Palmer might actually, Cedric Tillman third for me, then Trey Palmer, I think. And then it would probably be Tim Patrick, then Jake Bobo. I guess you can consider Simi Fehoko in that group is viable. I don't know. There's so many of them, but those are some of my favorites.
I think it was go ahead, TJ.
Worth noting that Trey Palmer has in fact woken up pissed off today.
Oh, that is a good note.
Yes,
that's a good note.
Yes,
he is 4 for 4 so far, and he has once again woken up pissed off today. So touchdown incoming for Trey Palmer.
Shout out Trey Palmer. For anybody, we don't need to dive into that. Everybody just go look up Trey Palmer and the waking up pissed off on Twitter. It's amazing. And he literally, was it Tuttle, I think, that found it? He literally scores a touchdown every single day. This dates back to college, multiple colleges, I believe, too, because he transferred. I was going to bring up Trey Palmer as, I wouldn't call him my favorite because I don't know how anyone can like feel really confident in the Bucks wide receivers and how it's all going to shake out. I think I actually like Cade Otton the best in terms of who benefits the most, like from a DFS perspective, since he's a tight end in Tampa. But the field is really gravitating to Jalen McMillan. I get it. I'm excited. Rookie, 8 targets last week. Like we're all excited for that. But like we don't have anything to show us that Jalen McMillan like is deserving of being the highest owned wide receiver amongst these guys. Like he hasn't done anything. He was like a fine draft pick. He wasn't like, this isn't Marvin Harrison, right? This isn't Brian Thomas. He's a fine player. Sterling Shepard is still playing a lot, and Trey Palmer was doing this without him last year alongside Evans and Godwin. I kind of think Trey Palmer makes for a really good tournament pivot amongst these guys down there because he is a second-year player. He has been around with the Bucs a little bit. He is kind of a home run hitter. He's like runs a 4.3 40. He's probably my favorite just in a vacuum tournament guy. If you had to make me rank him, I think I would go Tillman, McMillan, Yoshi probably in that order, like for just a cash game or projection standpoint. But Trey Palmer just really stands out to me as a tournament option amongst the Bucs. And let's just break those guys down too, John, because a lot of guys out here, right? Obviously the brutal injury for Chris Godwin when the game was essentially out of hand last week, but also Mike Evans can't keep the hammy right. I guess two-parter. How are you attacking this Bucs team, of course? And then are you confident that they're like, similar to the Browns, that Baker can keep them afloat? Or are you a little bit, we removed some pretty good players. How are you just like thinking about the Bucs overall?
So I have a counterpoint to your like Trey Palmer thing, which is that the Buccaneers, I agree. I often like side with the more veteran player, but the Bucs had Trey Palmer sitting there and still said, we got to use a 3rd round draft pick on Jalen McMillan in this past year's draft. Mm-hmm. And so you would think that maybe they're making that pick. And then I feel like that's still pretty high draft pick. Is 3rd rounder is like a lot of like draft capital or whatever. So they're using that pick on Jalen McMillan, and they're probably thinking someday when we don't have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, we're going to want like a really good wide receiver like this. Mm-hmm. Well, that day is today. And yeah, it was pretty bad watching both Bucs wide receivers go down last week, and it's a short week. I don't know. So I'm giving him like a little bit of a bump up just in terms of like the Buccaneers got to start, just because of how good that wide receiver class has been. The wide receiver draft class has been being a 3rd round pick and being like wide receiver off the board in this draft class when the comparison is like Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, all these other guys that have looked really good so far. Marvin Harrison has had, some standout weeks that maybe he would have even been drafted higher in a different wide receiver draft class. So I like Jalen McMillan the most. I will say, I think it's like basically unknowable, right? Like it's like McMillan could have a long touchdown called back and he would have been like the obvious choice, except that touchdown gets, it's going to be probably within a couple of receptions here. But I would say, it's probably like McMillan, Trey Palmer, and then Sterling Shepard. But I probably like K. Dotton the most, if we're being honest.
Neil, what you think about the Bucs?
Yeah, agreed. K. Dotton would probably be just like in a vacuum. He's probably the best play of the group, most likely to see double digits. Like if any of them is going to see double digit targets, it would probably be K. Dotton is the best bet. So I think I am largely on the same page that K. Dotton overall, and he's also tight end eligible, which helps a lot. So K. Dotton probably the best play of the Bucs. As I said already, I'm making the bet more so on McMillan. I hear your point that he has not been very good so far. So like, it's not a slam dunk play, but just sort of based on some of the coach speak, I feel like is pretty promising. Like the coaches, and it's been a little bit all over the place where they're saying, not one player is going to fill in for Chris Godwin. It's going to be, a number of players stepping up, but also you have coach speak saying, Jalen, this is the week we need you to step up. I'm finding the coach speak right now just to read it off. Offense coordinator Liam Cohen. I had a really good conversation with Jalen on Sunday and just said, this is the week. This is the week that you have to really kind of emerge. And I trust you. There's been, Todd Bowles also said stuff about trusting Jalen McMillan. He just needs to play like he did in college. He was a great player in college. We think he's a great player now. He just hasn't had the experience yet. Sounds like they're ready to lean on Jalen McMillan. It is worth noting Sterling Shepard also there. Like we haven't even brought up, or maybe you guys didn't. I wasn't listening. But Sterling Shepard, a 3rd wide receiver there, who could just like he's been out on the field. Maybe he does see an increase in usage this week also. So it's an interesting situation. I would rank it McMillan number 1, followed by Trey Palmer, followed by Sterling Shepard. Actually, K. Dotton ahead of all of them. But that would be my ranking. But agreed that it is also unknowable at this point. We're all just kind of taking stabs in the dark.
Yeah, and it also doesn't have to be anybody. There's a bunch of other 3K wide receivers. I think on a lot of weeks we would be like, dude, there's no value. Like we want to play, Tyreek still looks good here, but he's 9K instead of 7K. Like we want to play all these guys where like we got to pick one. You know, we just need to find the hit on the Bucks. I'm not saying you don't want to play these guys, but I'm just saying, right, we just talked about the Browns, and now we have Yoshi, and we have other options if you just like want to throw your hands up and not deal with the Bucks. Rob in chat brings up a good point. Why is Sterling Shepard being projected for the most fantasy points today, but being, you know, amongst this group, or at least, you know, depending upon projection sets you're looking at, he's right there, right? He's right there with McMillan and the other guys, but nobody cares about Sterling Shepard because we know who he is. I think that's part of it. It's Sterling Shepard. There's no high end outcome where you're like, oh my God, Sterling Shepard is like incredible, right? Jalen McMillan could just turn into this star. I have my clear reservations that he's got the physical ability yet to do that, but we shall see. Let's see here. Let's hit some questions before we move on. I'm glad we covered some of those. I had something. This is kind of funny. Have you guys looked at this? Shannon says, what does a lineup look like today if you just play 3 of the punt wide receivers? Is there any, from a roster construction perspective, is there anything that has stood out to you with this value, John? Like, you know, are you really only ending up with like one of these guys in lineups? Do you have, you know, a double Bucks punt Baker? Like, is there just anything from that perspective that is leading you to anything on this slate just because of the roster construction?
Like if you play like 3, it's tough because like you end up not playing Tyreek Hill then.
Right.
If you, because like you start to run out of like roster spots. That's the thing. It's like NBA value, right? Like if you wanted to have the best point per dollar lineup, you would not end up using anywhere near the salary, but you'd also come like nowhere close to cashing in a tournament. You know, because like it's really easy for the guys that are at like 3K to pay off their salary, but you just need raw points at some point out of the roster spots. So I wouldn't advocate. I'm probably not going to be playing more than 2. I'm not like setting any kind of like hard and set rules. And I guess like if I'm playing a Baker Mayfield team, I guess there's a pretty good chance I'm going to have like 2 value wide receivers, or I guess even if a Jamus Winston team, like double stacked, is probably going to have like 2 value-ish wide receivers. But yeah, you'd probably end up with a lot of like Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley.
Let's keep moving some of these. Johnny asks, this is no, sorry, wrong question. So two-parter again here, Neil. Mark Andrews, we didn't really touch on Mark Andrews, had the big game last week, still only, I believe, 54% of the snaps, but maybe some resurgence from Mark Andrews. So is he somebody you're interested in as a tournament pivot at tight end? And then Amon-Ra, you know, another expensive wide receiver from Frank. No JMO today. We mentioned the Lions wide receivers. Any interest in Amon-Ra without Jameson Williams and, of course, Mark Andrews?
Yeah, Mark Andrews is in play, I would say. He's not like a priority for me, just as you alluded to, just the route participation. Depending where you look, I'm seeing 44.4% route participation, just 4 targets in the game too. So he scored 2 touchdowns, but like not really the kind of usage that you're hoping for. He's, you know, as good as Mark Andrews is, he's just not being used like an elite tight end. And, you know, he paid it off with those. Maybe he does get more of his usage closer to the end zone, so maybe that's helpful with Mark Andrews. If Zay Flowers is out, then I would like Mark Andrews quite a bit. I think the latest, it sounds like Zay Flowers is likely to play, if I remember correctly. Actually, is that on the early slate? Do we know at this point if Zay Flowers is active?
I'm looking right now.
Can maybe remove that question mark with Zay Flowers. But yeah, I think he's playable, particularly if you're game stack. I'd still say he's playable. Yeah, he's only 4,000. Like, he's not priced like an elite tight end either, but he's kind of priced appropriately for his role. So yeah, he's playable, I would say, if you want to stack that game, if you want to use a bring back in your Jamus stacks, if you want to play Lamar, yeah, very much in play, but not a huge priority for me. And then the Amon-Ra St. Brown, yeah, L'Jarius Sneed out also. So he was somebody who was not really on my radar at all earlier, because it's like, man, this is a tough defense. Like, Tennessee has a pretty good defense, but L'Jarius Sneed is their best cornerback. So it does help quite a bit. So yeah, I think Amon-Ra in play, not a huge priority for me, just because we do have Tyreek Hill. We have so many like strong value receivers, but if you want to, like, if you have a spot to pay up, he's not going to be super highly owned, with T. Higgins out, more of the field going toward Jamar Chase instead. So yeah, I think he's a strong tournament play for sure.
Makes a ton of sense. Really quickly, I just wanted to hit some of these inactives. Nothing major, but just for anybody listening, so you are caught up. Alan Lazard is inactive, so poor Aaron's got to throw to only one of his old buddies today. And Devontae, Travis Etienne is inactive, so we'll probably touch on some Tank Bigsby here in a little bit. Tyreek, of course, active. Zay Flowers, active. Mason Rudolph starting again. Bucky Irving, active. T. Higgins is out. Rap Sheet also mentioned, which we'll get to this one too, DeAndre Hopkins is set to play a significant amount of snaps. We'll see what the heck that means, because Puka Nacua not playing his normal role sure didn't matter on Thursday. A good question here from Donnie, and we're going to kick it to our resident Washington expert. Shout out to the Wizards, by the way. Jordan Poole is at least looking fun, and the young players are looking fun. It's very Jamus-esque, Washington is, but they're looking fun. But so Jaden Daniels, of course, is questionable to play. The last I saw was like not expected to play, but technically not ruled out, John. So Donnie was just asking, are you getting to any Jaden Daniels or anything? Like, what are you doing with the Commanders? Obviously, Jaden Daniels is pretty important, but are you doing anything with those guys with kind of us being in limbo waiting for Daniels news?
I assume Jaden Daniels is going to play. I actually brought it up on my Friday show before any of these reports came out. Like, he was like, I was watching that game, and it was one of the rare times, because I had so much Jaden Daniels last week, that I was just watching that game. It's like the local market. So I wasn't like watching Red Zone or anything like that. And that game like felt already out of hand by the time Jaden Daniels got hurt. And because they were playing Carolina, and like Carolina could not score. So, and I think the Commanders already had a couple touchdowns at that point. And like he went back, jogged back to the locker room. I came back on the sidelines, like he was smiling, joking around on the sidelines. It didn't look like some kind of thing where like he's getting like pain injections because it's so painful he can't like stand or something. And it actually occurred to me at that time watching the game, they're going to have him questionable all week, because that's like a major piece of the offense. It's a big game coming up against Chicago. Why would they say anything other than, oh, he's questionable? We don't know. Doesn't look good. And then have him come out and play. So I strongly feel that he's going to play, like more so than I normally do. Having said that, if it wasn't for the possibility of late swap, I might not have that confidence. But I'm assuming Jaden Daniels is going to play. I'm going to go in assuming he's playing. If he's not, and I'm not going to have him on like he's not among my top 6 quarterbacks, but I'll have him in multi-entry. And if he doesn't play, I'll swap out to some Marcus Mariota. But I'm going in assuming he's going to play.
I like it. Some boots on the ground. I was watching as well, because I think, like all of us, we were heavily. I know Neil was invested in that game, and I was heavily invested in that game. And at about 30 minutes in, I was ready to drink some bleach. But Neil, anything? Did that change your mind? Were you already interested in Jaden Daniels? What about Washington? Because the Bears also, I think, their defense projects pretty well on DraftKings, but also, it's a pretty good matchup. Caleb Williams is 6K on DraftKings. I never know what to do with the wide receivers. DeAndre Swift is a little bit of an afterthought, but it's a good matchup. What about this game, especially if Jaden Daniels is playing?
Yeah, I mean, I like the Chicago side of the game for sure. We've been attacking the Washington secondary all year. I think we can continue to do so with Caleb Williams, DJ Moore. I like Cole Kmet's in play, like Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen. I don't know that I get to any of those three. I'm probably going to get to some. DJ Moore is the one pass catcher that I'm actually like have real interest in. And Caleb looks good. The Jaden Daniels side, it's tough because he, like, I was going to like fully fade Marcus Mariota pretty easily. Like he was getting some ownership. It's like, man, this is such a good defense. Like Chicago has just shut down some of the best offenses in the league. I don't really want to play anybody against Chicago. Jaden Daniels, though, like when you factor in that he is a like Sunday act, like now it's coming out that he's probably going to play. So John was ahead of that. Hopefully you played some battle royales and took advantage of being ahead of the market on that. Now there are some rumors out there. Hopefully other people listened to you, I guess, and played some battle royales with your advice. Because now it sounds more and more like he is going to play. So it becomes interesting just from a like it's late news, nobody's going to be on him perspective. Like nobody's been talking about Jaden Daniels all week, other than John. So maybe he becomes more interesting just from a like nobody's going to be on it at all. And he's Jaden Daniels, and like he's the type of quarterback that like you don't really see week to week. So even an awesome defense like the Bears, they don't really know how to handle Jaden Daniels. So yeah, I think it's sort of interesting. I probably don't get there, but I can see the appeal of Jaden Daniels in large field GPPs. I don't think I'm playing anybody else if I play Jaden Daniels, I would stack him up with either Zach Ertz or Terry McLaurin. I probably don't get there, and I probably don't play anybody else from Washington. But yeah, the Bears side, Caleb, DJ Moore, and actually DeAndre Swift is pretty interesting at 6,200 also. Washington, we attack them generally through the air, but they've been pretty weak against the run this year. We've seen some running backs have real blow up games. So I do like DeAndre Swift after, I'm not a huge fan. I didn't play him at all in best ball. He's looking good again this week.
He's catching a lot of passes, which is kind of expected for DeAndre Swift, but super nice for fantasy that even if you get the typical, like 16 for 62 rushing from DeAndre Swift, you can still have a good game with the receiving. A good question from Katie. A nice segue into some of these running backs. I wanted to get into but we talked about the wide receivers. Maybe the decisions today are not so much which punt wide receivers to play or whether or not to play Tyreek Hill. It's deciphering all of these running backs, because we could go on for the whole show about how many running backs. We just talked about DeAndre Swift, for Christ's sake, and he's like the 20th best running back on the whole slate. Katie asked John, Achane or Ken Walker. But then, if you have a strong lean between one of those two guys, and then, what are you doing with some of these chalky, in particular, running backs, the Achanes and Breeses of the world?
So I like Kenneth Walker more than Devin Achane. I think there's a price difference. There's a pretty big price difference. So I would certainly get to Walker if you can. Buffalo gives up the most, or second most receiving yards and second most receptions to running backs this season. Walker is playing a major role in the passing game. This is a game that's probably not going to people are not going to get to. But I think it's still got a pretty decent total. I like the idea that Buffalo could be slightly ahead here, and Kenneth Walker is getting one of those 6 reception games, and I think 4 out of 7 games Buffalo's given up 55 receiving yards and 5 receptions to a running back. So yeah, I think I was comparing Kenneth Walker and Joe Mixon in my article, and they're very comparable. Kenneth Walker seeing 1/4 of the ownership of Joe Mixon. So yeah, Kenneth Walker is a guy I like getting to. I would prioritize getting him to the lineup and finding the $1,600 or whatever over Devin Achane even.
I like this. Neil, what do you think about Achane and Ken Walker? And then if you could also touch on Breece Hall. We haven't talked about Breece Hall, but I know there's a FanDuel question. I don't know if he's still projecting as the highest owned DraftKings running back, but he's currently projecting as the highest owned FanDuel running back. I know Breece is, and we haven't quite gotten to the Jets are not very fun to talk about, so we haven't gotten there, but Breece is looking good too.
Yeah, Breece is looking good. I'm with John. I like Kenneth Walker quite a bit. Just the total run funnel defense. My one concern is can they keep the game close with the Bills? I guess it's just such a. I sometimes struggle with they're facing a good defense that happens to be a run funnel, so it's sort of a good spot. But also, are they going to be able to move the ball? But ultimately, he's involved enough in the passing game. It is a home game for Seattle, so I side with John on Kenneth Walker being my preference between those two. Love that he's so involved in the passing game lately. Obviously has the skill to just blow up against any team. We saw him do awesome against the Bears run defense, the Lions run defense, which is very good this year. So yeah, Kenneth Walker for me over DeAndre Swift, over Devin Achane. Breece Hall, I think Breece Hall looks awesome. He is currently my highest exposed running back. I can't tell. I sort of feel like a fish that I'm over the field on the highest projected ownership for a running back. But I'm currently above the 32% on Breece Hall. Just kind of a misprice on both sites. The Patriots have not been great against running backs this year. He's super involved in all aspects of the game. His game script independent because they use him through the air and on the ground. So yeah, ultimately I'm playing a lot of Breece Hall. I think he looks awesome.
Yep, I can't. Unfortunately, I can't push back on the super chalky running back. But John, what are you doing with Breece Hall? And then let's touch on maybe some of your other favorite running backs today.
Yeah, I'm going to end up playing a lot of Breece Hall. I think he's the number 1 projected running back on the slate. It's almost a similar thing to Tyreek Hill, where I think Well, I guess we got him projected at 31% ownership. I'll probably be right around that mark. I guess I just have to say that I really like him. You know, I think he's the top running back on the slate. Ownership considered, I'm not sure if I love him that much, but I'll probably be around 30%. I'll probably, like in single entry, I'll probably even roster him on more than like 30% of my single entry rosters, if that makes sense. Some of the other running backs, so like Javonte Williams, I think is going to be pretty chalky. I think it's a little bit tentative, and I might end up under the field. Just because I think they have multiple options there. I mean, every team has multiple options, but like Denver is like actively talking about trying to get multiple options involved. And so I normally like Javonte Williams. I just don't know that I love him at almost the same ownership as Brees Hall. After that, my love this year for Derrick Henry is well chronicled, and again reflected with a tag. And then Kenneth Walker, I just talked about. Joe Mixon, I think, is a guy you've got to be considering. He's had an outstanding season so far this year. I think he was a guy that came very close to like a tag for me in lineup HQ, but I think a couple other people already had him tagged. I'm like, oh, I'll go somewhere else. But I think you've got to be considering him. Yeah, it's a really good running back week. I was actually looking, and before I saw how good all these tight ends were, I was thinking that might be a double, or it might be a 3 running back week. So yeah, I don't know. I guess in terms of ownership, the guy that I want to be the most over the field on is probably Kenneth Walker, right? But we've got him projected like 4.1%. So I want to be multiple times that.
Makes a ton of sense. Neil, what do you got for some of your favorite running backs? Of course, the ones that John mentioned and any that he didn't.
Yeah, so Brees Hall, like I said, currently my highest exposed. I'm actually playing a ton of Saquon, just not projected for that crazy. I'm trying to find his projected ownership on my screen now. Saquon projected for really low ownership against Cincinnati. I think it could be a game that goes back and forth, a lot of scoring in the game. I also think it could just be a Saquon 202 kind of game. I think it's just the Bengals, the Eagles will be able to do whatever they want against the Bengals. The Bengals might be good enough, even without Tyreek Hill, to keep the game, or without T. Higgins, to keep the game close. So I'm actually playing a good amount of Saquon Barkley this week. J.K. Dobbins looks like one of the better point per dollar plays on the slate. I'm getting to a lot of him just based on his point per dollar. He's only 6,900, projects really well. So getting to a lot of J.K. Dobbins. I have Javonte Williams in about a quarter of my lineups. Love that they use him in the passing game and on the ground. Should be able to just, run all over Carolina. So I do like Javonte. Talked about Devin Achane. I'm with you on James Conner being just an awesome play against Miami. Another run funnel defense. Looks great. Kareem Hunt, really strong point per dollar play at 6,300. 63 carries in 3 games with the Chiefs.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, did not see that coming. Just out of nowhere. Kareem Hunt is awesome. And a great matchup with Las Vegas. So you can't really poke too many holes in it. Josh Jacobs, I think, is a kind of a fun, I think pretty sub 10%, I guess not that contrarian play. We talked about DeAndre Swift. Mixon he's just been awesome. The usage is awesome. The role, the matchup here with the Colts is awesome. Just really hard to poke holes in Joe Mixon. And then just kind of a mix of players that I don't have a ton of.
Yeah, I think you guys hit everybody that is in my pool of considerable play. I guess Tank Bigsby. I'll toss Tank Bigsby in there. I do want to talk about that game really quickly. The chat has mentioned it a couple of times, and I find it both painful to figure out for DFS, but also intriguing. Obviously, ETN is out, and Tank dominated last week, and he looks good. I cannot believe. I'm going to talk about this year is just a total put your brain in a pretzel. Every running back is staying healthy, and also all the ones smashing are old as dirt. All the old Kareem Hunt, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, what year? Dalvin Cook just got called up to the Dallas Cowboys roster. What? And Tank Bigsby, we thought sucked, and now he's amazing. He's better than Travis Etienne. Bizarro year.
That's why we talk all summer about playing 0 wide receiver, and then their best ball teams. They got to stack up on the running back.
Yes, exactly. Because all the good wide receivers are going to suck and get hurt, and take the 30-year-old running backs because they're going to be awesome and never get hurt. But if the Packers are generally kind of more of a run funnel defense as well, and if the Jags are going to stay in this game, I think Tank is going to have a lot to do with that on the ground. Now, Neil, my concern is that they don't stay in this game, and he has been pretty game script dependent with D'Ernest Johnson playing more of the passing down work historically. And so the Packers, I believe, have the highest team total on the slate, or right there as the highest. The problem is I don't know what Packers to play, right? Like it looks really good for Jordan Love and the pass catchers. Josh Jacobs is fine. Tucker Kraft is fine, but the pricing, it's like, are you doing anything with these Packers when we're expecting them to smash? It's just like, I don't know who to pick.
Same page. Jaden Reed is the one that I feel like we can be pretty confident in. Decent usage, and just like they find ways to get him the ball. So like week to week, I'm pretty confident that Jaden Reed will have some opportunities. He's also the most expensive, so it's kind of priced in anyway. But yeah, I think Jaden Reed is my favorite, the one that I'm going out of my way to make sure I have some exposure to. Tucker Kraft, I think is in play. He's got the tight end eligibility, which helps out quite a bit. Not that expensive. Outside of those two, I'm not forcing myself to get to any Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, Christian Watson, anybody else on the team. Just don't trust the role. I guess it would be Romeo Doubs next, just because of the usage. Like Dontavian Wicks, Christian Watson very much splitting a role, whereas Romeo Doubs seems to just have a role on the team. So I guess it would be probably Romeo Doubs if you're just looking at the wide receivers after Jaden Reed, would be the one that I have the most interest in. I don't think I'm playing a ton of anybody, if any, outside of Jaden Reed and Josh Jacobs from the Packers. I think you could. Jordan Love very much in play. It's just the struggle is like, do I want to double stack him? And if I do, who do I want it to be with? I guess you could do a Jordan Love with Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed would be probably the way I would go. Maybe Tucker Kraft instead. I don't know. I think I'm out on the Tank Bigsby thing. He's been brought up on like every show I've been on. So like, I don't think he's going to come in super contrarian. People are clearly thinking about Tank Bigsby, and he's just not involved in the passing game like at all. And on DraftKings in particular, it's just like, that's so valuable getting those PPR points. So I think it's going to be a fade for me, but yeah, I definitely see the reason to play him. Like Packers, not great against the run, should have an awesome role. And like you said, he's been very good just with so many other running backs I like better. I don't think I get to Bigsby today.
John, anything on the Packers for you or Bigsby?
Yeah, just I have a specific way of playing this game that I want to have a good amount of Jordan Love. When I have Jordan Love, I'm going to probably have like one or two Jacksonville guys, on the other side of that. And I'm going to, if I have to pick one, I'm going to pick Jaden Reed. But like for my 150 set or whatever, it's just going to be a rotation of, of the Packers wide receivers. I've heard so many people say the same thing this week, which is like, oh, I love the idea of like playing the Packers and Jordan Love. I just don't know who to stack. Like on a real football basis, that's not a reason not to get to a guy that gets so many good receivers. I just can't play the quarterback. Like I can't imagine playing that quarterback, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, just like you gotta like take a little bit of a chance, and then that's why I do 150 lineups in the contests that allow it. Is I want to play some Jordan Love and have a rotation of his receivers. But if I have to pick one, and in other contests you have to basically just pick one, and I'm gonna pick Jaden Reed. So.
I don't think the price is too terrible on Jaden Reed on DraftKings in particular. I think over 8K on FanDuel, but 6,700 on DraftKings, I think is totally fine. Last week was a bit of a stinker for Jaden Reed, but the role and everything seems pretty good. I agree with you guys. The chat brought it up early, and so the chat's definitely on the Packers thing, but they've kept sticking out in my mind, honestly, over the course of the week as this is the team I think, maybe other than like the Ravens every week, that we should feel the most confident in, especially in a good matchup like this, to just like, they're going to score today. Like they're for sure going to score plenty of points. I don't know who's going to do it, but like, I want those teams, right? It's like people always stray away from the 49ers, not so much this year, but people used to always stray because it's like, is it Ayuk or is it Debo or is it Kittle or whatever? And it's like, I don't know. They're going to score 42 points. Like I'll live with it. Right. And that's kind of how it's just been in the back of my brain. It's like, look, Jamus is fun, right? These other guys are fun. I get it. And it's just like, yeah, but the Packers are just going to go score 40 today. So why don't I just figure out a way to get some of that into my lineups? Let's hit some more questions. God, you can tell how I thought we'd make it longer than week 8 before we had the question from OK. Elijah Moore or Andre Yoshivas. I assume this is Yoshi for all of us, but are you guys playing any Elijah Moore?
I don't think so. Even with all my Jamus, I'm just scrolling through my lineups. I'm getting to some Jerry Jeudy. I'm currently not getting to any Elijah Moore. I don't think it's like the craziest thing. I don't believe in the talent. The price and the matchup and the Jameis love for me makes it all like he's a reasonable play, but I don't think I'm getting there.
Same, John.
Yeah, he's down the pecking order for me. If I'm doing 150 lineups, I'm having a bunch of James Winston, then I'll probably end up with some Elijah Moore, but he's not somebody I'm really going out of my way.
Makes a ton of sense. I like this question actually from Bryant. Says, so if there was a game that you were forced to stack on DraftKings, your number one game stack, John, what's that game you're picking?
Actually, I think this is a really relevant question because this is a week where we've talked so much about value, and that's not normally how it goes. Usually, this is the number one thing that's on our minds. It's this 50-point game or that 50-point game. And for me, I think the game is the Philadelphia Cincinnati game.
Yeah,
I think it's got the best combination of a high spread or a high total, close spread. These are two really good offenses we often look to get to, and now we're maybe a little bit more distracted by Cleveland and Tampa Bay and these offenses that have just lost a bunch of receivers. Usually that's not a good thing. And then Cincinnati did just go out and say, well, you know what, everybody else is doing it. We got to get a value, wide receiver in there. So now we've got Yoshivas that we can consider. So I think this is the number one game environment for me. And guys like Saquon Barkley and AJ Brown are going to go kind of overlooked because everybody's healthy. Everybody's back healthy now for that team. So there is no price that's standing out. But when one of them goes out and puts up 40 points, they're not thinking well, I had to do this because of my DraftKings price or what. I just went out and had a great game. So they end up being the guy you had to get to, despite the fact that none of their teammates were in.
I love that, Neil. What do you think about favorite game stack? And then let's talk about that game because of course T is out, but as John said, there's a lot to like in this one. But first, favorite game stack.
Yeah, that was the first game that popped into my head. So I mean, I'm playing a lot of Jameis Winston. So I kind of feel like I need to say that one, but no, it's definitely between those two for me. I like the Cincinnati Philly game quite a bit. My latest run, I actually have Saquon as my highest owned player overall at 35%, which I don't know that I'm going to stick with that, but I'm playing a ton of Saquon. Also, really forcing myself. I'm not getting to it naturally. Jalen Hurts. Just bringing up the projections a bit on all of the Eagles guys. Jalen Hurts, I like with AJ Brown. You can obviously single stack it with Hurts. I like that quite a bit. Also like the other side of it, Joe Burrow, one of my favorite quarterback plays on the slate. It's tougher without T Higgins, or actually maybe it's in some ways easier without T Higgins because you have Jamar Chase now projects better point per dollar than he would with T Higgins there, and Yoshivas makes it a lot easier to do a double stack there. I'm not playing Chase Brown or Zach Moss at all from the Cincy side, but I'm playing all parts of the Eagles. Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, maybe a little Devontae Smith. I'm not sure about that. Grant, I forget how to pronounce it. Calcaterra. I forget how you pronounce it. Calcaterra. Maybe I'll get to a little bit there. So I'm playing all sides of the Eagles, and then the Philly side, on the Bengals side, it's mostly Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Andre Yoshivas. I don't know if I'll get to much else from the Bengals.
John, AJ Brown, the priority for you on the Eagles side, or how are you to, I think the Bengals are a little, I agree with Neil. The Bengals they kind of have two wide receivers and Burrow now, unless you're playing the running backs, but the Eagles, they got three pretty darn good football players that to decide between for your game stacks.
Yeah. AJ Brown is probably fits into the category of guy I wish I had more of, but I'm not able to get there as often as I would like. But I do like him. If you were targeting this game, then yes, I like the idea of getting to AJ Brown. I think the AJ Brown, Jamar Chase pairing is a really good pairing.
Mm-hmm.
But just the way things are evolving, I'm not getting as much AJ Brown as I would like to. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to. I think he's a good play. I wish I had more of him.
Yeah, I can't believe that guy that's clicking those buttons over there won't let you put the guys you want into your lineups. Which quarterback, Neil? Which quarterback do you prefer in this game, Joe Burrow or Jalen Hurts?
Probably has to be Hurts. Just factoring in the rushing upside for Hurts. Yeah, it's close, but I think a slight preference for Hurts.
Same for you, John.
Go Burrow. Sorry, which question is Burrow versus Hurts?
Burrow versus Hurts. Yes.
I'd go Burrow. like that question is going to basically come down to Jalen Hurts to get a rushing touchdown, which we can't really predict. Like if Hurts gets a rushing touchdown, then I probably want Hurts. But I'm going to go in probably with more Burrow than Hurts.
Man, we've talked about so many cheap wide receivers already, and we're still getting deeper and deeper cuts into the chat. A Mason Tipton shout out already, which Chris Olave is back. I know Rashid Shaheed is out, but no thank you. Spencer Rattler to Mason Tipton. We got to draw a line somewhere, guys. We're talking about Cedric Tillman and Sterling Shepard and Jake Bobo, and we're even going to have a race against Jake Bobo up here coming soon. That's how much we're talking about these crappy guys. I think we're going to draw the line at Mason Tipton, so congratulations on the Mason Tipton touchdown later. Allen Robinson, no, guys, you guys are killing me. Not Allen Robinson. I don't think Khalif Raymond is crazy though, or Tim Patrick are crazy. Maybe more your Millie Maker stacks. But if the Titans can somehow score, which I'm not so sure that they can, but if they can somehow score, I actually don't think like Amon-Ra and those guys are too bad. Mr. Richard, we kind of answered the question. AJ Brown versus Barkley. Neil did mention that. Barkley is his current highest owned player, and John mentioned that his friend Mr. Computer is not allowing him to play AJ Brown, but he really, really likes him. Oh God, we got to talk about this. I thank you, Adam, for asking this question. FanDuel. So there's two things we can dive into here. One, anything that's different about FanDuel, that you're playing, differently on FanDuel. And I think the most relevant one that Adam brings up is, what about Dalton Kincaid on FanDuel, who is the min-priced tight end? And I don't know how that happens at FanDuel, but it sure as shit happens every few weeks in every sport that somebody gets mispriced. John, what are you doing with a $4,000 Dalton Kincaid, which is kind of interesting because it's clearly a bad price, but he's also clearly not been very good this year. So what do you do with him?
So I think he's my second highest owned tight end after Njoku on FanDuel. I haven't finalized things yet, but so it is weird because he's a really good play at 4,000, but David Njoku is probably also underpriced at 5,500. So it's not, and then you've still got K-Dot as well, and then all the other tight ends who would normally play on a normal week, like Travis Kelce, Evan Ingram is going to get in there for me, but I am often going to end up just concentrating on a game stack somewhere else and having 4,000 left. Tight end. Okay, I know Dalton Kincaid. He might do well. Yeah, and I guess in terms of other guys that are maybe standouts, I'm getting a bit more DeAndre Swift and a little more DJ Moore. So the Bears are a little bit better priced, I think, on FanDuel, and maybe a little bit more like Amon-Ra St. Brown as well.
Neil, what about Kincaid and any other relevant FanDuel specific plays?
Yeah, I mean, Kincaid clearly mispriced. It is funny that they did that misprice, and Njoku is still the better point per dollar play than Kincaid. He's just has not been that good this year. So it's I almost feel like it was intentional, to get people talking about FanDuel, because I feel like
experiment. Yeah.
It is they we bring him up on every show because it's man, Dalton Kincaid is min price. You got to bring that up on every single show. So good on FanDuel for making a mistake that's just egregious enough that we have to talk about it, but not so egregious that it can't miss. Because clearly Dalton Kincaid can just not put up a fantasy score that you want even at 4,000. Yeah, I think it. John says he's the second highest tight end. That makes sense on FanDuel, behind David Njoku. Njoku just a clearly better play, still really low priced. It'd be a little bit more surprising if Njoku just completely misses as opposed to Kincaid, I think. And Kincaid is also playable on DraftKings at 4,900, just because the ownership going to be super low on, but not a priority. Kenneth Walker also, as I recall, stands out on FanDuel just because I think he's the same price on both sites, and that's more valuable on FanDuel with the $60,000 salary cap as opposed to 50,000. So yeah, I think Kenneth Walker kind of stands out on FanDuel. Maybe I should pull that up, but those are the ones that it's a lot of the same plays. So people complain about you don't talk about FanDuel enough. Usually it's mostly the same plays on both sites, but there are some pricing differences here. Let me pull up some of the best point per dollar on FanDuel. Yeah, Javonte Williams also $6,000 on
6K,
FanDuel, like
yeah.
even cheaper on FanDuel. So I like Javonte quite a bit on FanDuel. Breece Hall also looks great at running back. As I said, Kenneth Walker stands out. Yeah, those are. I still like Saquon even at 9,100 on FanDuel. I think it's worth playing a bit of Saquon there. J.K. Dobbins 7,400, not a bad price on FanDuel. And then you have like the value wide receivers don't stand out quite as much on FanDuel. I mean, Trey Palmer is 4,000, so he's actually the mid price there, whereas Jalen McMillan is 4,900. So it's a little bit more of a conversation between just those two on FanDuel, where Trey Palmer is min priced. But yeah, they just not quite as good. Like the value is not quite as awesome. Andre Yoshua's 5,200 looks pretty good, but not like. No like must plays there. There's still pretty good value. And then yeah, we talked about Kincaid, Njoku, kind of stand out as the best on FanDuel.
That's kind of what I was just gonna say is the biggest difference for me is, other than Kincaid, but I guess Kincaid plays into this, is that those, I mean, it's not that the cheap wide receivers aren't valuable. If a $5,000 wide receiver has a big game, it's good on FanDuel as well. But it's just like from a roster construction perspective, I never I'm like seeking it out because they're good plays, but I never like when I go into FanDuel, I'm like, I gotta get one of these guys in there. It's just not quite that same thing, especially like, I mean, like even with Kincaid, even without Kincaid, excuse me, Otten and Njoku, whoever, they're cheap too. It's just not that big of a pinch from a salary perspective. So still like all of our value wide receivers, just a little bit less so on FanDuel. Just quickly, anything, John, on the night game, Cowboys and Niners, anything stand? I was hoping Jordan Mason would get a little bit of a price decrease because I'm really interested in him in this Cowboys game, but pretty expensive on FanDuel. And any priority plays on the Sunday night football game?
Not really any priorities for me. I was like reading some of my Sunday night article, but that's like more showdown. It's tough. Like they're pretty expensive, and they're more expensive like than the way the offenses have been performing. So yeah, I'd like to get to more Jordan Mason, but he's a little bit pricey. I'd say maybe like CeeDee Lamb is probably the guy I'm going to end up like having the most of from the Sunday night game on FanDuel.
Neil?
Yeah, nothing really standing out from the night game for the full slate. CeeDee Lamb, of course, is always viable. 9,100. The price is fine there. Ricky Pearsall, kind of interesting. Just from last week, 81.1% rep participation, saw 5 targets in the game. He's only 5,200 on FanDuel, so he stands out to me as like, yeah, he's a pretty good value. One that we don't have on DraftKings. So I do like some Pearsall with Brandon Ayuk out. Debo it's tough because if we knew Debo was like a full go, he would look pretty good. Like he's just, I know Adam Levitan tweeted out earlier today, his usage without Brandon Ayuk has been just insane throughout his career. So if we knew Debo was a full go, he would be pretty interesting. I'm sort of concerned about the pneumonia stuff, which I guess is just, one more little feather in Ricky Pearsall's cap. But yeah, no huge priorities here for me.
And I'll say, if you do play some of these other cheap wide receivers, I mean, you could play the teammate like Ricky Pearsall, George Kittle. I'll just toss him into the ring, projecting to be 3% owned right now on FanDuel. And if Brandon Ayuk is out and Debo's got the sniffles, Ricky Pearsall maybe isn't a superstar. George Kittle could just feast on a terrible Dallas Cowboys defense in a pretty fun Sunday night game. So that should cover the majority of the FanDuel stuff. As Neil said, it's really a lot of the same plays, just a few little minor variations. So everything else we've discussed should cover FanDuel as well. Eatery Edge, we did discuss Elijah Moore and more of a 1 in 150 large field whatever type in your Jamus stacks or something. I think he fits in there. Let's talk about tight end. Frank asked about Noah Fant, and I think it's a good segue into the tight ends. Not FanDuel, not just FanDuel with the Kincaid and stuff, because we talked so much about the value wide receivers and the running backs. We really talked about how you're handling the tight ends, John. We all said how Cade Otton is really popping, and David Njoku looks really good, but I think those are pretty obvious. And I think everybody would say, no shit, Sherlock. Like, we got it. But what are you doing with tight? Are those two guys really your priorities? Are you mixing in, what's kind of your approach to tight end?
I'm playing a ton of Cade Otton. I think he's the absolute priority, and then David Njoku. And then after those two, I think this is actually what I said in my article. And then with mentioning the Dalton Kincaid thing, it's basically Njoku, Cade Otton, and then I'm probably, if I'm not playing one of those guys, there's got to be a reason, and that reason will probably be some other player in my lineup. And then Brock Bowers, I think, is going to be the best raw projected. Evan Ingram is a guy. I guess maybe some Evan Ingram outside if I'm trying to get different outside of Otton and but it's like, I don't know. There's just nothing that stands out to me other than the couple of guys that are the best values, or if I'm playing a certain quarterback, then I might want to pair him with his tight end.
Which one do you prefer?
Otton between Otton and Njoku. I think for the value, I'd probably go Otton. But it's tough because I'm playing a lot of Jamus Winston too. So and then that's giving me a lot of David Njoku.
Neil, just tight end and then of course those two priorities.
Those two are also my highest owned tight ends, Cade Otton and David Njoku. Again, I'm playing a lot of Jamus, which leads to a lot of Njoku, and he's just a great value. Like, just his usage has been awesome in recent weeks with no Amari Cooper. So I think those two are the clear priorities. I do have interest in Travis Kelce. Just his role without Rashee Rice is better. It has not been like the same as like the Brock Bowers role, so it's not as awesome, but a pretty strong role without Rashee Rice. Brock Bowers also somebody that I'd like to get into some of my lineups. We've seen teams have a lot of success against the Chiefs. Tight ends have a lot of success. I'm not really leaning into it with Brock Bowers. I'd like to have like a little bit of exposure, less for the matchup than because he's been targeted 36 times over the past 3 weeks. I mean, that's just insane for a tight end. I'm not totally buying the tight ends against Kansas City thing. We've seen it multiple times, but I think that is really just Steve Spagnuolo usually like just forcing teams to throw to the center, and the tight end gets there a lot. I don't think they're going to do that with Brock Bowers. I think they're going to probably make life hell for Brock Bowers. So I'm not really loving the matchup, but I still think it's a fine play just because they forced the ball to Brock Bowers. So he is in play, not a huge priority. Some others that I like, I like Otton, Njoku, Kelce, Evan Ingram. I'm getting to a fair amount. Just he gets a ton of targets in a game environment that we like. Easy bring back for that Green Bay if you're playing the Jordan Love stacks. Kyle Pitts has actually had pretty great usage. I think 23 targets over the past 3 weeks.
Neil, come on.
I know. Now that I said it can't happen.
We made it the whole show without talking about it.
You didn't tell me the rule. It's a fair rule. Like it's in our
contracts that Kyle Pitts has to come up at least once on every show.
Apologies. I brought him up. It's a game that we like, so we're playing a lot of the Tampa Bay side, maybe some, mini correlation there. I don't know. He's 4,400 and he's been targeted 23 times over the past 3 games. So hard to completely ignore. Dalton Schultz, like the usage much better for Schultz when one of the top wide receivers is out. And he's only 4,100, has a great matchup with the Colts. So I think, and going a little bit overlooked, not getting a ton of ownership. So I do kind of like Dalton Schultz. Tucker Kraft mostly just in Jordan Love stacks, I think. And yeah, you could play, I think Trey McBride in play, Dalton Kincaid at like virtually 0 ownership looks okay on DraftKings. Not a priority. Nobody else I'm really getting to.
Yep, I agree with you guys. I think you hit that. Also, I don't actually really like him, but Grant Calcaterra was pretty popular last week. I know you mentioned him earlier in the Eagle segment. Was real popular last week and not at all popular because I believe he had one target last week, but they threw the ball 14 times, something like that. So I don't think he's crazy, right? Like in a Hurts, AJ Brown, Chase, toss Calcaterra in there instead of playing Cade Otton or something. I think is reasonable because they're gonna throw it more than 14 times today. So the crunch time crew is here, but we got to wrap with our tournament winning, our GPP final takes, dare I say. And let's kick it. Neil, you get us rolling. What's the thing you need to win tournaments today? We need to be better. Last week we were not so good, particularly myself. We were not very good. So let's it's a bounce back. This is a bounce back week.
I forgot what we said last week.
It was so bad it's been wiped from our. Men in Black flashy thing from.
I think I said Terry McLaurin because I was trying to force John to make a Jaden Daniels stack, and he refused to do it anyway.
We stacked that game in our takes.
That was so bad. It was the worst. Yeah. To be fair, Jaden Daniels had like 50 rushing yards on his first attempt.
He was gonna smash.
It did not work out there at all. This week it's going to be a Jamus double stack is going to be what wins it all.
I love it, John.
I'm going off the board. Somebody I've been trying to keep under wraps. I got him tagged, but didn't bring him up too much during the show. DeAndre Hopkins week. Chiefs
thank you.
Indoors, new receiver. We just saw this on Thursday night, and it was actually a comparison I was thinking about beforehand. I did a whole Thursday night article where I was like talking about Puka's receiving prop is 29.5. It indicates he's obviously not going to see a full complement. Blah 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 blah. Just went out and torched the slate. DeAndre Hopkins is going to do the same thing here. Like, why not? The Chiefs, like Patrick Mahomes, I think has only played 11 games in the regular season indoors in his career. Like, we forget what a boost that is for a quarterback. Like, he's in a good spot. They had a whole like voodoo doll or something again. There's something going on Twitter. But like, I don't know. There's a narrative out there. If you like narratives, you want to Google it, I guess. But my narrative is that DeAndre Hopkins had 1,000 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns last season. People forget because he was on Tennessee. Like, he just can't play anymore. Or maybe it was just Tennessee. So, DeAndre Hopkins.
I think it's fair to say it was Tennessee. It was Tennessee with what we're seeing from the Titans so far. I love that thing, and thank you for bringing up Nuke. Anyway, wanted to get to that, and of course, too much to cover. I'm going to toss my guy in, who I've kind of already talked about and don't need to belabor, but it's James Conner. The low owned running back pivot amongst a sea of really good running back plays. But that game's just got so much more juice now with Tua back and good pass catcher going to score, goal line touchdowns. I know Kyler steals a little bit, but he's not running like tush pushes with Kyler Murray at the goal line. It's still James Conner territory down there. So really big on James Conner. Those are our 3 stands, and let's bring in the crunch time crew to round us out. All right, guys. 2 rules for this week. No more Kyle Pitts. Neil covered that one, so nobody talk about Kyle Pitts. And B, you guys got to bring us some heat, because at least myself, last week was possibly the worst week of NFL DFS I can ever remember experiencing. Like, it was miserable from the opening kickoff to everything was bad. So I'm really looking forward to a much better day, and I need Chief get us going with some positivity.
Well, I don't know how positive this is going to be, because I feel like I'm on an island by myself, but there's so many good games, and I think people feel like the Texans have fallen off of a cliff. I think they're going to destroy Indianapolis today. And so I'm playing a whole lot of overpriced CJ Stroud, Stephon Diggs, and Joe Mixon, and hoping that all the production comes from those guys. Got some Tank Dell too, but I'm always trying to look for the 1 or 2 teams that could absolutely break a slate that no one wants to play. I mean, I think CJ Stroud's got 300 plus in him today and a couple of touchdowns, and if that happens early on, I mean, he's right there in the thick of it. And if he throws for 300, you got to think Diggs and Dell account for 60 to 70% of that, I would say. So I don't think the Colts are very good, and I think the Texans are still very good. So I like the Texans. I'm going to save you guys from my Miami take, because I've run that one for 3 weeks straight. But I am playing the Dolphins today. I do have 2 double stacks. I'm just not going to talk about it, okay?
Please don't curse it for us, because we're all on the Dolphins. I think I do just. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I forgot to say it during the show. If you guys recall, these 2 teams played in Week 1. Texans, Colts. Anthony Richardson was extremely popular. John also nailed the Alec Pierce. Unbelievable Alec Pierce long play, and it's just funny to see 7 weeks later nobody gives a about anybody besides Joe Mixon in this game, and Nico's not playing, so it's just an interesting one. Luuch.
Yeah, I mean, there are just so many plays today that just seem like they're in absolute amazing spots, but
I like the de facto number one receiver on the team with the highest implied total, Amon-Ra St. Brown, not getting a ton of love. Heavy favorites, I understand. I can't tell you how the game script's going to go. If there's anything Tennessee has going for them at all, is T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons. That's it. So I'm hoping they lean on the air. Again, no L'Jarius Sneed. Cheeto's been on IR. They play a lot of man coverage, and he's going to have his opportunities in that game at home. There's going to be some points for the Lions today. I like
I love that. Kristi, round us out. I'm feeling better already, guys. This is much better than I felt last week than with Jalen Coker and it's Andy Dalton and stuff talk. This is better.
Exactly. I've got a decent amount of Bears exposure, and I mean, Moore is going to be popular, but I really like DeAndre Swift, and I think he's someone that's sneaky, especially on FanDuel. He's priced similarly to Javonte Williams, A-Chain, plays like that. So I think Swift's kind of a sneaky play and got some good exposure for him.
I love it.
Can I mention one last thing before you guys leave? I only didn't mention this actually because our good friend SquirrelPatrol, one of the greatest tournament players of this generation, mentioned it. I've got way too much DeAndre Hopkins this week. Like, just I have an absurd amount. Because if you don't get him this week, next week he's going to be 7K. I can't not get him in.
You can't get an argument from me. If you two guys are on it and I never even brought it up on the show, that's how you know it's a good play. I think that's what the rule is. But we're running a little behind. We'll get out of you guys' hair. Stick with these three. They'll get you all set up leading up to lock and answer any questions that we didn't get to. I know the chat is firing with the questions today, guys. So enjoy that, and we will see you guys next Sunday.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, drop your questions in the live stream on Discord, and we will do our best to sift through the YouTube stuff. Let me get these reads out of the way, and then we'll be on our way. Splash Sports, we talk about it every week, and we're going to talk about it again. Splash Sports, raising the game with a brand new quick picks contest, giving you a chance to win up to 12x your entries. Pick more or less on any stat categories and build your entry using at least 2 selections, available in 34 states. Splash Sports, the ultimate platform for peer-to-peer fantasy and betting contests. Challenge our RotoGrinders experts at splashsports.com/RotoGrinders and use the promo code ROTO10, that's ROTO10, ROTO10, and get a $10 credit when you join your first contest over there at Splash Sports. The RG Listener League, don't forget to join each week. Play alongside the other viewers as well as your favorite RG host. You'll have the chance every week to compete for first place and win yourself a month of RG Combo Premium. Check the description for an invite to the contest when it goes live each week. And RG Combo Lite, our newest product, gives you the power of simulation for a fraction of the price of the other tools. Competitors charge hundreds of a month for their sim products. Combo Lite, just $39.99. It includes our SimLabs lineup building tool, plus content from some of your favorite DFS analysts. Combo Lite doesn't limit you to one sport. You get the core 4 major sports, MLB, NFL, NBA, PGA, and for SimLabs access, you're not going to find a more cost-effective deal anywhere else. $39.99 RG Combo Lite. You get SimLabs for sports. That's a big deal because NBA is in full swing. We're in the midst of the NFL season. I got Kristi Metzger and Chief Justice 06 with me here. How are you doing, Kristi? How are you feeling about today's slate?
You know, I like the slate a lot. I really do. We kind of talked about that when we were talking with Squirrel before they left their show there, but there's a lot of great plays. I mean, there's a lot of chalky plays, but I think there's a lot of ways to get different too. And it's a big slate, but I'm kind of excited about it and ready to break down with you guys for sure.
Chief Justice 06, good to see you again. We talked on Monday about as much as we could, but of course, so much changes from Monday to Sunday. Mm-hmm. So, Chief, other than Miami, what's still sticking with you from some of our look ahead from 6 days ago?
I don't know. I was in the hospital for a part of the week, and I didn't get out until Friday evening.
Good Lord, man!
And so I was a little behind on my slate attack, which actually might help me not have. I didn't dig in the same this week because I just didn't have as much time. But I'm still on Miami, but I started falling in love with this Houston situation. I'm with you, on the Lions also. I just think good offenses, we overlook it. I'm going to mention something you mentioned about the Titans, and I know we're kind of talking about games and not necessarily positions, but I mean, the Lions have a 28 implied total, basically. They're at home. I don't think the Titans are going to keep up. I mean, we've seen the Lions score 40 points, against the Cowboys. Like, it's very reasonable that they can
run it up too.
They can come out here and blast the Titans in 3 quarters. And I feel that same way about the Texans. I kind of feel that way about the Packers going to Jacksonville, who, I mean, I just think there are a lot of lopsided games. If you ask me what I think the most competitive game is, I do think it's Philly-Cincy. If I had to just say, hey, this is the competitive one, but I think there's a lot of lopsided scores. I think Kansas City's a lopsided score. Like, how many times have we been able to, stack Mahomes with the wide receiver and the tight end recently? I just think those little nuances this week are going to help you out. So just bear with this. It's just so many spots. You can't play them all.
That's right. Well, you sound good. You look good. I hope all is well in your world. It's like the one week we haven't really talked much, of course, and I feel bad. You feel like we'd coordinate. It looks like we got like the same color shirt going on. You figure we planned that kind of thing. Like, they're probably like, wow, look at these guys, coming on dressed in the same stuff. But hope all is well, man. Hope you're good. But well, I'm glad you're with us here today, man, because we need you, because we have a lot to cover. I'll stick right there with you. We'll throw it over to you first for quarterback. Let's hear it. I mean, you're gonna have to mention Tua, as briefly as you want to touch on him. If you haven't heard from Chief in the last month, he's been beating this drum for a while as soon as Tua would come back, and here we are, and he's got the Cardinals. So keep it brief on Tua if you want, but what do you got for us today?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tua's fine as long as they're saying he's healthy. Look, man, I do think from a personal standpoint, I was actually kind of hoping he was going to give it up. I just don't want to see him take those big hits, but he wants to, he wants to continue to compete. And if he's going to be the quarterback that leads this team, and they are at home, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, all situations aren't created equal. I've played them all the weeks without Tua. God, I've got to play him with him back. So I've got a lot of double stacks of Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. I mentioned this earlier, in terms of one of my big stands. I've got a lot of CJ Stroud and this team, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell. I've got a lot of this situation. They're at home. Their implied total is 25, so it's not really lacking too much behind some of these bigger offenses. And I just think they're just kind of out in the wind this week. No one's really concerned about them. I like them a ton. You mentioned this Lions team. Now, this one shocked me. So we've got the Lions. We've been playing Jameson Williams every week, the shiny new toy in this offense, and he's out this week, and no one's really playing Tim Patrick. No one's playing Amon-Ra St. Brown. No one's playing Jared Goff. I mean, this offense is just – no one wants to play them this week. I don't think the Titans slow them down at all. So I'm in on Goff. I'm not as high on Jameis as everybody else. I'm actually higher on, believe it or not, this is my sneaky quarterback this week, and it's Mr. Mariota. It's
mic drop.
It's Mr. Mariota. Here's why. Now this is like deep dive stuff, so I get it. But what if Jaden Daniels legit is not playing? Right? Because, I know they're saying, hey, he's meeting, and yeah, we'll find out. But, if you just get him in some lineups now, how many people are going to be willing to take that stand and make an adjustment at 3 o'clock? I don't think so. So I think hear me out. That's deep tournament stuff. This is like on Showdown, you're playing the backup because you think I get it. But I'm saying just reserve 4 or 5 lineups. That's really what I'm saying. You're playing 100, reserve 4 or 5 for Mariota in the end, and if it comes to it, you've got yourself an interesting spot. Looks like Yeezy said he was playing. I didn't get that yet, but if he's playing, then obviously don't do it. But if I didn't see where Jaden was playing, I thought he was still up in the air. So if he's playing, obviously don't worry about it. But I did want to mention that. Doesn't matter now. I can't get sneaky. Let's move it along.
All right, Kristi, quarterback.
Yeah. So for quarterback, a guy that I tagged earlier in the week, I talked a little bit about getting some Bears exposure, but I do like Caleb Williams a decent amount for tournaments. I think he's a great play. I do think, for cash game purposes, you're going to see Winston carry a lot of ownership. You're going to see Bo Nix carry a lot of ownership. But I like Caleb Williams. Lamar Jackson is another one. He's just been getting it done. Just with that rushing upside and just upside in general that he brings. I want exposure to him, especially on FanDuel. I think he makes a great play. Those are a couple of my favorites. I do think Tua, we've talked a lot about Miami. Obviously, they were a big bust last week. But with Tua back, I think why not go to him right out of the chute? We have interest in Tyreek. We have interest in A-Chain. It obviously helps Jalen Waddle. So I like getting Tua in there. Chief mentioned kind of the Green Bay game. Jordan Love is always a great tournament play. And so getting exposure to that game, to both he and I also think CJ Stroud, throw him out there too. I think the Houston Texans game is very interesting from a tournament perspective. So I think those are guys I like a lot. And then you got Joe Burrow at the top there. A great game environment. We know T. Higgins is out. Chase is going to be a pretty popular play, but I think quarterback exposure is always very, very spread out. And I really like Joe Burrow a lot. And I think he's a fantastic tournament play too. So those are a few of the guys that I'm probably concentrated on the most.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. And, I like getting a little bit of Jared Goff in there. I just think they're going to hang a really big number.
Yep.
I don't know what morale's like in Nashville, but it's probably not good. I mean, I'm looking at, I watched some Colorado Buffs football this weekend. So, it's October. I'm looking at mock drafts. The Yankees are in an 0-2 hole, and my Titans stink. So, and the Sixers haven't won a game. And it's really good in my fandom here, Chief. We talk about our favorite teams a lot, but things are not good in Tennessee for sure. Huge team total, and just because Tennessee's a funnel doesn't mean that they're going to slow down Jahmyr Gibbs, who has so many ways to beat you. And with that segue, we'll start rolling into running back here, Chief. What are your thoughts at the position?
So, I mean, I'm a Carolina fan, and so for me, I hate the fact that Javonte Williams is getting all this ownership. I despise it, but I still think at 6K on both sites this week, 6K, I still think he's in play. I think a sneaky play that's probably just as good as him. I heard Kristi mention it is DeAndre Swift. He's a guy I like this week, this mid 6K range, but Kareem Hunt is continuing to get just like stupid volume, and he's just kind of off the radar. I don't understand this. So Kareem Hunt is a guy that I really love this week. We've seen him. He basically came out of the gate picking up 15 plus carries. I think last game he had 22 carries. Like, that's a lot of workload. I think Andy Reid trusts him. This is a guy that's been in this offense before, and so as long as I usually call him Sonic the Hedgehog, but as long as not P. Ryan, what's his last name? Jeez, he's only been out a few weeks and I can't remember his name now. Pacheco. As long as Pacheco is going to be out of this lineup, I think this is Kareem Hunt's backfield, as evidenced by the amount of volume they are giving him. So I like him a ton. I think J.K. Dobbins is going to get serious volume again this week. So I'm expecting them to kind of handle the Saints here. 6,900, I'm okay with him. And then, in a Seattle game where, it may be raining a touch, may have some wind, I think Kenneth Walker is a good play. I was shocked at the ownership on A-Chain, but I think with Tua back, that actually helps A-Chain. So I like him a bit. And then last but not least for me, in terms of tournaments, he's not picking up a lot of ownership. I consider this reasonable. It's Josh Jacobs. I think Green Bay is going to be in control of this game late. And so I think that means for me, Jacobs picks up, a few extra carries. And if he pops one late, this is a guy we've seen go for 100 yards, 2 or 3 touchdowns. So I like him a ton in this Packers offense that should run all over the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, our guy TJ is in the house behind the scenes, and he's doing a nice job of displaying some SimLabs optimal running back chart right there on our screen. And a lot of guys there you just mentioned. One guy who we didn't is Derrick Henry. And the Browns are a big focal point of conversation this weekend. Kristi, what are your thoughts on Derrick Henry?
I love Derrick Henry. I mean, he's just been absolutely smashing. I think he is going to go a little bit overlooked. Just because he is expensive. There's a lot of guys kind of in the mid-tier for running back, but I think Henry's a phenomenal play and definitely have some good exposure to him.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to get a piece of Baltimore, and he seems like, he's just paving the way for the script everyone, I guess, wants. Baltimore with a lead, and well, everyone that's playing Jamus probably wants it that way anyway, I would imagine. But anyway, rest of the position. I mean, this is loaded. I mean, DeAndre Swift, you mentioned him, and a great spot, great matchup. Beimfohr mentioned James Conner, really fair price for the volume he gets. But, Kenneth Walker, I don't really care about the rain there. Buffalo's been getting gashed, giving up a ton of receptions. There are just so many plays here. How do you like navigate through this one today?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things, we talked about it, Javonte Williams is so cheap, but if you look on DraftKings, there's so many guys right there that I like pivoting to. I mean, Javonte Williams, there's a lot of ways. I know it's a great matchup, but there's a lot of ways for other guys to factor in a little bit, and maybe he is a little bit of a bust. Kareem Hunt is one of my favorite plays on the slate at running back. I tagged him earlier this week. We just mentioned he's been getting the job done. He's only 6,300. He's priced up at 8,100 or so over on FanDuel, but he's a core play for me in DraftKings. He's just phenomenal. There's he's priced, just a few $100s more than Javonte. I'll take that. Joe Mixon is another guy I have a ton of exposure to. Boy, he's just been smashing. He looks like a different player this year playing for Houston. He's just had huge games at 7,700. I think he's a great play. He was one of my tags as well. I agree with James Conner. I like getting some exposure to that game as well. And he's priced in that mid tier as well. So yeah, guys, and Breece Hall, of course, at the top, he's probably the most popular play. I get it. I like him too, but I really kind of like that mid tier where you get in the Hunts, the Connors, the Swifts, and then paying up for Mixon is definitely a priority for me this week.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. And Chief, you mentioned Houston. Joe Mixon's red zone numbers, his red zone touches, they're off the charts. Is Mixon the way you're attacking Houston? A good amount, Chief.
I like Mixon, but I'm attacking it more with CJ in the passing game because I feel like Mixon is the exposure that everyone wants. And it's not like he's getting crazy ownership because he's expensive. Or more expensive than he has been. In fact, I'm live on the show right now.
Yes,
I am building a Stroud Mixon wide receiver lineup. So I'm either going to go with Diggs or Dell. I think I'm going to go with Diggs in this one. And yeah, I'm like way overexposing myself, but there are too many cheap plays. I just feel like between Stroud, Mixon, and one of the receivers, that's all the production in this game. If they score 30-ish points, you got to think. Between those three, they've soaked up most of the production. So that's what I'm doing right now, actually, as we speak.
Yeah, we didn't mention Bijan. I think that game's kind of an interesting transition. Obviously, Tampa losing Godwin and Edmonds, and here comes Jalen McMillan. Sterling Shepard's in play. Kate Otten at tight end. But that game, it wasn't that long ago that Kirk Cousins threw for 500 yards. Of course, things were a little different. It was, in Atlanta, inside. I understand. There's a part of me that wonders if Tampa's going to struggle to sustain drives, could lead to some more extra possessions for Atlanta. And I know Drake London is, catching some ownership here. But if Tyreek was priced appropriately, I feel like London might be pushing 20% projected ownership today, and he's not. And there's just so many plays at wide receiver. Jamar Chase without Higgins. Yoshi is kind of a sneaky, cheap tournament dart as well against the Eagles defense now. Amon-Ra, A.J. Brown has a tag by a head chopper on lineup HQ. Drake London, of course, Tyreek. We didn't even mention the Jaden Reeds of the world and DJ Moore, who is going to be part of a big game environment as well. Just a loaded slate. So let's start over there. Kristi, Jamar Chase, what are your thoughts on that situation today against the Eagles?
Yeah, I think his ownership is certainly going to bump up now with T. Higgins being out, but I like it. I think he's a fantastic play. Someone that I definitely want to get a lot of exposure to. Tyreek obviously is the guy that, we talked about a lot about last week. Didn't quite work out so well for us, but he, getting Tua back, he is way, way too cheap. And to me, I'm just, going to take it, especially over on DK at 7K. It's, you just got to get him in your lineups. So I like him a lot. DJ Moore is actually a guy I tagged earlier in the week. Have him paired with Caleb, obviously. I think he's at a good price point, and we've seen just big upside from him. And now that Caleb Williams has gotten in more of a rhythm, throwing more, I think that's a fantastic play. I think also we kind of mentioned this earlier. You mentioned Drake London. I do think that he is going to be a guy that does maybe get a little bit overlooked just because of his price point too, because there is so much cheap value at the wide receiver range this week. There's just a ton of ways to go. If you kind of look at, all the cheap guys out there, there's cheap Tampa Bay guys. Yoshi Voss now is a play. We've got cheap Cleveland guys with Tillman, Judy. We've got Trey Palmer, McMillan. So there's a ton of guys that kind of fit into that spot. So I think there's going to leave a lot of guys in the mid tier a little bit more available. Brian Thomas is a guy that I like too. I think he's been getting a ton of volume, and we've talked about that game environment a little bit. So that I certainly have interest there. But yeah, I would say overall, Chase, DJ Moore, Tyreek Hill are all great plays. I would mention over on FanDuel with them playing the night game, that always tends to go a little bit overlooked. And I think getting CeeDee Lamb, have a lot of interest in him over there. So I think that's a good way to get different, especially if you're looking to play Chase. He's a good pivot off of Chase.
Yeah, I like that CD call a lot. Out of these value Cleveland guys, Judy, Cedric Tillman, Elijah Moore, obviously a little bit of a price difference between Judy and the other two. How do you rank them, or any one of them that you don't like? Is that a thing?
I think they're all fine. I probably like Tillman the best, actually. I've got Tillman kind of as my favorite. Judy's probably third for me, but I would say Tillman and then Elijah Moore and then Judy. I think they're all fine though. They're all very cheap, and I think they should get some good exposure with Winston chucking it. So
yeah, Tillman played over 80% of the snaps last week, 3,300 on DK. Yeah, I'm sign me up for that. Chief, speaking of cheap receivers, the Tampa Bay guy order over there, are you prioritizing any of those guys?
Well, I think they're all like valuable in their own way, because I think they're gonna have to throw the ball in this game.
Yep.
So I can't tell you which one of these guys is going to have the 20-point game, but I think all of these guys should be somewhere in the teens. I think that's definitely possible. So like Cade Otton could be somewhere between 10 and 20 points. Jalen McMillan could be between 10 and 20. Trey Palmer and Sterling Shepard. As of right now, I feel like Sterling Shepard should have the Chris Godwin role. I think when I was kind of looking at the depth charts, I think Sterling is going to be more of the slot receiver. So perhaps if he has the Chris Godwin role, then I know he's not Chris Godwin, but in my mind, if Chris Godwin's getting 9 to 12 targets a game, Shepard should have 5 to 7, in this one. I think that's a reasonable expectation. I'm not trying to overshoot it. And if that's the case, if he's getting those, 4, 5, 8-yard targets, then they should all be, hear what I'm saying? I'm not saying air quoting here, fairly safe. So, it feels like 5 or 6 catches, for 40, 50 yards with upside for a touchdown is kind of a reasonable expectation for him, similar to Cade Otton. So I think all of these guys are in play. You just have to decide like how you want to approach the slate. Right now, we think McMillan's getting all the ownership and Shepard's not getting a lot. Cade Otton's getting tons because he's at tight end, and I think that's the right play. I will mention that. I know we're not tight end. Sorry, I'm jumping the gun, but I do think that's the right ownership. I think it's good chalk on these guys this week for what it's worth. They are at home, and they're going to have to throw the ball if they want to keep up with the Falcons at all here.
Tyreek Hill, I'm giving you the floor still. I want to hear your other thoughts on this position, but kick it off with Tyreek Hill and, 7K, obviously just too cheap, goes without saying. What side of the fence are you on today? Baiting you into this one.
I feel like I got to go back and check and look and see. I'm not running 150 today. Like I did decide to hand build because I was out of my process this week. So I decided this. I said, I'm hand building everything just to kind of refocus. I'm pretty close to the lock button on Tyreek. I think it's the right play. If we started the season with Tyreek at 7K and we start this, now I'm pretty close to the lock button on Jalen Waddle also. If Tyreek Hill was 7K to start the season and Waddle was 5,400 to start the season on DraftKings, And if Tyreek was 7,500 and Waddle was 5,900, I think that's what it is on FanDuel. It's pretty close. Whatever numbers I've given you, it's pretty close. If we told you that to start the season there were no Tua injuries, and we'd say, my God, this is the biggest misprice in history, even bigger than this Dalton Kincaid misprice on like that's what we'd be talking about. And so I still think everybody's talking about it, but I still think the ownership's going to be a little bit too low. So those are just my guys. I've been rolling with Miami with Tua out. Like I said, he's in. I'm playing him.
You mentioned competitive game. You mentioned Philly, Cincy, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. Gabe, what's your interest level in those guys?
Pretty interested. I mean, I think we feel like they're going to have to maybe keep up or keep pushing in this game. So sometimes to me, it's not even about keeping up. It's about understanding, hey, Joe Burrow's on the other side of this thing. So we can't just take our foot off the gas and turn around and hand Saquon the ball 40 times and expect to get out of here clean. And if for some reason the Bengals can get out ahead here by any reasonable stretch of 10 to 12 points, the Eagles are going to have to drop back and pass a little bit. So I like AJ Brown. I like Devontae Smith. We've seen what AJ Brown can do. One of my favorite props this week is AJ Brown more than 5.5 receptions. And so, as a result of that, I love AJ Brown this week in tournaments also.
Kristi, talk to me about tight end. Brock Bowers, atop of the pricing charts here. Just a sensational start to his rookie campaign. Where are you going today at the position?
Yeah, so tight end, I think K. Dotton. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can we go backward one? I'm so sorry, guys.
Absolutely. No.
Wide receiver, hear me out. Everybody wants to play. As much as I'm playing Tyreek and Waddle, I am not ignoring Marvin Harrison Jr. I know he hasn't been productive in a few weeks, but he hasn't his talent didn't just get sucked away by aliens. If this game is competitive, I think Harrison is going to have a big part to play in it. So I'm running him on the other side of a lot of these Dolphins stats. All right. Sorry, Kristi. Didn't mean to cut you off. Please forgive me.
No, you're great. I think tight end is an interesting spot for sure. I think K. Dotton is going to be one of the most popular plays over on DK at 3,500. Hard to get away from that. I think he's fantastic. You brought up Brock Bowers. He's a little bit more expensive, but he's great. I like that a lot. David Njoku, fantastic play on both sites. I think where it gets interesting is obviously we've got Dalton Kincaid over on FanDuel. That's just 4K. So I think, both he and Njoku are two of the top plays over there just because of the price play. Also throw Hunter Henry in there. I think he's fine too. And then I know Chiefs talked a lot about that Green Bay game. You can't overlook Tucker Kraft and what he's done. He gets a ton of goal line looks. I think he's a fantastic tournament play and someone that I have exposure to there. So yeah, those are my favorites. I do on DK, I do like K. Dotton quite a bit. And on FanDuel, probably Njoku and Kincaid they just make a lot of sense and allow you to really pay up at some other spots.
K. Dotton's just a dude. No gloves.
Right?
I think he had the fingers taped last weekend. Wrong. He's playing in the wrong era of football. I mean, glad he's on today's slate.
No question.
That's a 90s look, man. I love it. Chief, tight end. Let's hit this, and then we will move on to some questions.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward this week. But I also think these higher end guys are still fine. I think Brock Bowers is fine. I think Travis Kelce's fine. But I think the value is in the Njoku. The value is, in the K. Dottons. And so I think for me, I'm mostly playing Otten Njoku on DraftKings. I'm mostly playing Otten Njoku, even on FanDuel. I don't have a single Dalton Kincaid share, which may be the wrong thing, but I'm just going to lean into a little bit of weather. We're expecting some rain. We're expecting some wind. I don't feel like the Bills passing game is suddenly a rocket ship. And even still, I think, Amari Cooper being there should keep Kincaid's production down some. Once again, he's 4K, so that's not me telling anyone to not play a mispriced 4K Dalton Kincaid. That's me saying I'm not playing Kincaid today. I feel more comfortable with Njoku and Otten because I think they're going to have the real volume on the cheap end. But also on the top end, I do think Bowers and I do think Kelce are still going to have significant volume that you should lean into.
4K on FanDuel is Dalton Kincaid, which,
Yes.
I mean, come on now. Anyway, if you have any defense questions, throw them in. And I feel like for time purposes, we will just start getting to some questions. I'm going to go into the Discord right now. Here's our guy, Carolina guy. What's up, man? Hope all is well. Thanks for tuning in all these years. FanDuel GPP. I'll go to you, Kristi. One bullet to win it all. What's your favorite quarterback and wide receiver stack?
Well, I do like, I had him tagged earlier on. I think Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, that's really my favorite this week. And you can still get in a lot of great plays like the Tyreeks, Mixon, some of those upside plays. So I'm going to go with Caleb and DJ.
I like that. And we will see Jaden Daniels, what that situation is. I know Chief mentioned Mariota.
Well, supposedly he's going to play. So.
Confirmed. He just seconds ago confirmed starting.
Same time. We saw at the same time. Thank you for popping in, TJ. Yeah, that's so that changes some things. So since we have a little bit of that, any adjustments, guys? I mean, do we obviously is Jaden Daniels? How healthy he's going to be? Do we really know? Are you making any edits? Like, what's the real time move right now? Open to the floor because I'm sure everyone is, taking a second here to kind of take that information in. And what are you guys doing? Like, what's the move?
I mean,
yeah,
if he's healthy, I'm okay with it.
Exactly. And he's going to come in so low owned, and think about that. I mean, he was so popular the last couple of weeks. And so, yeah, great time to jump on him. It makes me like the Bears even more on the other side.
Yep. Okay, cool. Perfect. Jaden Daniels to start, according to Rap, barring any setbacks. So that is the big news here at 12:52. Wrong sport. This isn't NBA. Come on. Give us a break here. We're used to that NBA 6:55, notification push. Anyway, QQ from our guy Raj in the Discord. Single entry, big GPP. Chief, would you rather have Breece Hall and J.K. Dobbins or Joe Mixon and James Conner?
Ooh.
It's a good one.
Give me... I think I like Houston way too much today. Give me the Mixon combo. Mixon and Conner.
All right. I got a cash game DraftKings question for Kristi. Can you rank these running backs? Let's see. Breece Hall, Javonte, Kareem Hunt, and A-Chain. Like, who would you prioritize for cash? Are they all okay for cash, I should say, first of all?
Yeah, I think for me, Hunt is definitely a favorite. I like A-Chain. It's probably the three cheaper ones. Actually, I love Breece, great matchup and all, but I think I'd take the savings there and go, Hunt, A-Chain, and Javonte.
All right. Chief, DraftKings tournaments. Thoughts on playing either Mahomes or Josh Allen today?
No Josh Allen for me because I don't love the weather report there. Love Mahomes today. Love the Mahomes, Kelsey, Hopkins stack also. Love playing Mahomes with Kareem Hunt. Way more Mahomes than Josh Allen.
Yeah, I don't mind Josh Allen for large field stuff. Amari Cooper's still too cheap for probably what his role is going to start. I mean, you mentioned DeAndre Hopkins. They'll get him now. Amari Cooper could be 7K in 2 weeks, 7,500 if he keeps producing. So again, the weather's a big question there. But we talked about that game on Food for Thought, but we didn't know what the weather would be. We're not fortune tellers here, time travelers, but there could be points there if the weather helps us out here. Sorry, I'm rambling. FanDuel single entry. Kristi, would you rather have A-Chain and Denver's defense or Kenneth Walker and Detroit's defense?
Ooh, those are all plays that I really, really like. And those are probably my two favorite defenses too. I think I like Kenneth Walker a lot. And I think maybe just getting a little bit different there, going the Walker Lions defense. But I think they're both really good plays.
Okay, let's see. Romeo Dobbs or Brian Thomas, Chief?
Give me Thomas on the other side. I think they're behind in this game.
Okay, let's see. Two teams, QB, Winston, and I'm trying to see what Bill's saying in the Discord. Winston and Wilson. Not sure what he's going with there. I'll circle back to that one. DK tournaments. When dumpster diving for a defense, do you pick one that just fits or lowest owned? He's starting Carolina D. Our guy Steve is. So what do you do for defenses typically, Chief? You go for lower ownership or cheap ones or both?
I just try to go for guys that I feel like are going to have quarterbacks that they can take advantage of. So while you're playing the Panthers defense, I'm loading up on the Broncos defense today because I don't trust Bryce Young already, and Deontay Johnson is sitting out. But that's just me. And if I don't like a defense like that, I just kind of go with what fits in terms of matchup things that I look at.
Okay, FanDuel Cash, Kristi, J.K. Dobbins or 8-Chain for last running back. He already has two Dolphins. He already has 2 Dolphins in his cash game lineup, though.
Oh, 2 Dolphins in there. I think I'd still go 8-Chain though. I don't know. I just trust him a little bit more than Dobbins in there. Upside is a little bit bigger too.
All right, FanDuel tournament. Tyreek Hill and McMillan or Brian Thomas and Javonte Williams, Chief.
Tyreek Hill, McMillan, or
Brian Thomas.
I think I'm going. I think the Brian Thomas Javonte is probably the right answer, but I'm still going with Hill and Palmer.
All right, FanDuel single entry, Kristi, Jalen Hurts and Tyreek Hill or Bo Nix and Jamar Chase.
What was the first one again?
Jalen Hurts and Tyreek or Bo Nix and Jamar Chase.
The first one.
Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to scroll through some YouTube comments here. Saquon or Winston on FanDuel, Kristi. I'll leave it there with you.
Saquon or which one?
Joe Mixon.
I really like Mixon this week. I'm going Mixon.
All right. Chief, Kareem Hunt or Breece Hall on FanDuel?
Give me Breece.
Okay. Let's see. Thoughts on Miami. Worried about rhythm at all in Miami? Anybody worried about that Tua is a little rusty? Tua and company. Chief, I'll leave it with you. Nope.
I'm not worried. They've had Rusty for 3 weeks. Not worried about it.
Kristi, this is a good one for you about the Bears. The Bears game. If you're stacking Chicago, would you pair Williams with Kmet or would you go up at tight end?
I think Kmet is a sneaky play. Nobody's going to play him this week, honestly, because there's so much value and Otten and Njoku and some of those guys in there. So Kmet's sneaky. I like it.
Tim Patrick or Yoshi, Chief? I like Yoshi in this one. But what are your thoughts?
Man, that one's splitting hairs for me. Give me Yoshi because we've seen him. I definitely think he's going to get some targets today. But I think I think they're equal plays, to be honest. If I'm you, I build the same lineup and just split them.
Njoku or Kmet on FanDuel, Kristi?
Ooh, I think either one is great. I'd probably go Njoku. Upside's maybe just a little bit higher, but they're both great plays. We've seen Kmet just come off of a couple 2 touchdown games too.
Sterling Shepard or Trey Palmer, Chief? Tough one.
If I think Shepard has the Godwin role, give me Shepard, but I think you need to be playing all of them because any of them could get there.
Another question for you, Chief. What defense are you rolling with today from our guy Danks on YouTube?
Oh, my main one is the Denver Broncos on both sides. And I know I'm paying $5K, but trust me, Young has been bad. He didn't suddenly get good sitting down for 3 weeks. It's
right.
And Denver's defense is actually fine. So
they are.
I'm just playing Denver.
Hit that save button, 12:59 Eastern. Make sure you're wrapping up, getting them in. Sorry, we tried to get to as much as we can. What's up to B-Shot in the chat, who's probably on his hometown Lions today? DK Cash, Bo Nix and Titans defense, or Jamus Williams and Seattle defense, Kristi?
I'd go. Did you say Winston and Seattle?
Winston, yes.
Winston, yeah, that's the one I would take. Winston, Seattle.
Good stuff. I got Snow Chill is in the YouTube chat, Chief. He's a big food for thought follower as well for many years. So shout out to our guy, Mr. No Chill. 1 o'clock. We hit 1 Eastern. And TJ, thank you for your help on the back end as well, doing what you do. TJ, you got any hot takes for us? We'll get you a little cameo time if you're around. If
I don't want it. I've been around since 7:30 a.m. right now. I'm ready to get out of here.
All right, that's a hot take, I suppose. And I think we're all ready to.
No, I'm in the middle of adjusting some things, and I finished with a Jake Bobo last piece over Trey Palmer and Cedric Tillman and Tim Patrick. I don't think I wanted that, but here we are.
All right. Well, we will see. I think someone's going to score for Detroit. I'm a big fan of St. Brown today. We'll see. St. Brown 8 for 120 and 2. That's my hot take. Although it is a Khalif Raymond revenge game, right, B-Shot? But all right, Chief. Lastly, how many points are Miami putting on the board today? And then we'll get out of here.
For my health, let me just say they score in the 30s finally to make up for all my pain and suffering.
Right?
Please get it in the 30s.
Yep.
All righty. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and sticking with us all morning. To everyone on the fantastic shows before us, and for our guy TJ, who is probably sleep deprived. That's Kristi. That's Chief. I'm Justin. Enjoy your Sunday and good luck.